Thank you, and welcome. Good afternoon. As he said, I'm PJ Smith, the 2024 NABOR president, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our first ever symposium. On behalf of NABOR, I would like to thank you all for attending. We have a fabulous panel of 5 distinguished speakers today who will be providing you with a wealth of data and information that will be valuable to your business, especially in our unique real estate market. Before we dive in, I'd like to ask everyone to please make sure their devices are set on silent mode. Thank you. We are honored to have multiple government officials and dignitaries in attendance today. When your name is called, please stand and remain standing until everyone has been recognized. Audience, please hold your applause until the end. Florida State Representative, House District 82, Lauren Mello. Collier County Commissioner Rick LaCastro, District 1. Collier County Commissioner Dan Cowell, District 4. Candidate for Florida House of Representatives, District 81, Yvette Benaroche. The Greater Naples Chamber CEO, Christina Park. Royal Palm Coast Realtor Association President, Marlissa Geravosi, oh, she's gonna kill me. Bonita Springs Estero Realtors Association, Mark Ledbetter. Please give them a hand for all their valuable contributions to our community. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to recognize a few members, ask them to stand or remain standing until all have been recognized. NABOR Board of Directors, 2024, please stand. Thank you. Our esteemed past presidents for NABOR, if you would please stand. RPAC major investors. And you probably keep standing because all of you are major investors. And the 2024 Symposium Committee members and volunteers, including the co-chairs of Debbie Z and Brenda Fioretti. Thank you, amazing work you've done this year. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to thank our sponsors for their generous support. Our platinum sponsor is the FERPTA Group. Our gold sponsor is Ave Maria Development and Motion Media. And every one of our table sponsors, thank you so much for coming out, setting up in this new venue. We really appreciate it. I encourage all of you to visit our sponsors' tables during the break and at the reception following the speaker presentations. Find out what they have to offer, and please support their business, their services, and their products, all of which are valuable to you as a real estate professional. Now it's time to introduce our moderator, Tim Ayton, senior editor and columnist at the Naples Press and Gulf Shore Business. Please give him a warm round of applause for our friend, Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Well, thank you, PJ. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. It's so good to see so many friendly faces walking around today. A lot of people here that I know. It's good and welcome. It's the first time I've been able to sit on ice here at the Hertz Arena, or at least think about it, that it's not really ice. But anyway, I'm honored to moderate the first ever symposium. It's for NABOR, the Naples Area Board of Realtors, of course. It's an esteemed organization with more than 8,500 members. And of course, as you know, it serves as the voice of real estate for the Naples area. First, I ask you to stand as we honor our flag with the country that represents us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the Naples Area Board of Realtors is proud to present a panel of highly respected speakers today. They will share some insights into the growth of Collier County, along with information about the economy and how it affects our real estate market. There's a lot of news going on now, so it should be interesting. The knowledge that will be shared with you today will help you grow your real estate business and become even more successful. I know you'll learn something new this afternoon from everyone. At this time, I would like to introduce the symposium's platinum sponsor. Please give a warm welcome to the owner and founder of FERPTA, the FERPTA group is Olga Vendel, who will tell you about how their specialized services can help make your foreign real estate transactions less taxing. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Olga Vindel. I'm the FERPTA manager for the FERPTA group. Our focus is on helping foreign sellers navigate the FERPTA requirements during the sale of their property. We work closely with real estate agents and title companies to ensure that they have a seamless closing process for their clients, whether that involves preparing IRS forms, applying for their ITINs, or simply answering any questions. We don't charge for consultation. Our goal is to provide an outstanding experience throughout this journey. We're also committed to supporting our real estate agents through educational seminars at our local boards such as NABOR and private brokerages. With offices in Cape Coral, Naples, our team speaks fluently English, Spanish, Creole, French, enabling us to connect with your clients in various backgrounds. Remember, FERPTA is just a withholding, not a tax. Please visit our booth, outside booth number 1. We are here to answer any questions you have and to help your clients. Thank you, NABOR, for hosting this amazing event, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Olga, and for the work that FERPTA does. Well, have you been wondering how real estate will shape Naples, Florida's future? I know a lot of people have been, and our next speaker has a good idea. And I'd like to introduce Jamie French, who serves as the Collier County Growth Management Department head. Jamie and I had a good chance to talk at lunch, and they really do a lot of work. You'd be impressed. He joined Collier County government in 2003. In his role as department head, Jamie provides direct oversight to the various department review, inspections, and code enforcement teams within growth management, which is quite a huge job. He has a Master of Business Administration degree and is a certified public manager with more than 25 years of leadership experience. Jamie has directed the development and implementation of the floodplain management programs, resiliency planning, and community response solutions in anticipation and response to natural disasters and state of emergency declarations. Please welcome Jamie, who will tell you more about the present and future growth of Collier County.
Thank you. I was told I get to ride the Zamboni. No? Well, thank you all very much for having me. First and foremost, I just want to recognize those folks that are in the current path of Hurricane Helene. I will tell you, as a certified floodplain manager, and I'm also a incident command instructor for FEMA in one of my roles. And I will tell you is that I had the pleasure and the unfortunate advantage and disadvantage of working on the hurricane micro recovery of the Panhandle, where I was there for about a month and a half. And it is devastating to see what families go through. And we're just so very lucky to have such good emergency managers throughout the state of Florida and leadership out of the governor's office. And our hopes and prayers are with them coming from Collier, and I certainly hope you'll keep them in your heart and in your mind. So they asked me to come and talk a little bit about the present and future of Collier County. And unfortunately, when you're with the county, we spend more time looking through the rearview mirror than the windshield because it's all data that occurred. But as we start to look forward and start to see a little bit more, and that's me, hey, this is a little bit about us, community development divisions. After some reorganization, we're made up of just about 1,000 people my closest colleagues. We have the building review, operations, regulatory management, development review, all of your zoning entitlements, community planning and resiliency, so yes, economic development, housing policy, as well as all of the resiliency efforts to include the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers study that's currently ongoing on the Collier County coastline. Housing policy, as I said, domestic animal services, we're a real zoo. Code enforcement, and now parks and recreation. We truly have embodied more of a community development type of an organization and really trying to remove those interior or those internal barriers that exist between the departments so that we can better serve our community and give them a more stable and a more confident level of service within the county government. So we're so appreciative of the county leadership as well as the commissioners that we get to work with every day and the community we get to serve. So a little bit about Collier County. We're made up of just a little over 2,300 miles, of which about 1,900 of those miles is considered a special flood hazard area. We are the only community that 97% of your entire county is a special flood hazard area. That's Collier County. So of that, we have about 14% are entitled areas, which makes up about 213,000, almost 214,000 buildable lots, or entitled meaning zoned and can be developed or redeveloped. And we have just about 8% of our county left that's considered unentitled but able to be developed. The rest, the other 2/3, is all preserves, parks, open space. And that's very important when you have 97% of your community set as a special flood hazard area. Our demographics in Collier County, we work with the census right out of our office. So based off of Lightcast and using the U.S. Census population, we're coming in right now at about 411,000 residents or people that live here better than 6 months in one day. We recognize that our regional employment is right around 188,000 jobs, and of which 40,000 people or more drive into Collier County every day to go to work. Average median income, as reported by HUD, is $104,300, and that's very important when we're classifying properties that are asking additional zoning for affordable housing, that they're willing to make that affordable housing commitment. Talks about our migration, where are these folks coming from? I know during the COVID years, I think I had presented to NABOR, and we actually saw a pattern for the first time where California showed up on the map and they were outpacing New York City. But we're back down to that typical pattern where we're starting to see the Northeast and the Midwest. They clearly have dominance over who's actually moving into Collier County or who's moving into the state of Florida. Where the red numbers are, that's actually a migration pattern out. Those are Florida residents that have relocated, sold their properties, and they've relocated to those other states. And you'll see Tennessee is the darker red. Tennessee, much like the state of Florida, no state income taxes, very similar. Sales tax is much higher, but again, still in the Southeast, quality of life is probably about the same. Our business characteristics. What this demonstrates is that we're made up of predominantly small employers, contractors, small boutique shops, law firms, as well as really in the financial market. The manufacturing sector does have some presence, but overall of all those jobs, it's really more so tourism and construction that seem to dominate our market. Largest industries, as you can imagine, no different than what we're sending permits on, is on memory care centers, ALFs, hospital expansions. Great deal. In the FEMA world, in these disasters, Collier County has probably one of the largest populations of what they would consider frail and elderly than anywhere else in the country. So that's why when they actually have to do a response to this area, it has to be much more measured and calculated. And we too, at the local level, we recognize that and try to mitigate those needs up front before a disaster actually occurs. So our population trends, what we've seen, what you'll see in the chart is this is what's come from the Bureau of Economic and Business reporting out of the University of Florida. And where the green numbers are is where we're actually thinking that number is going to land a more conservative approach. We use metro forecasting. I don't know if anyone's familiar with David Farmer and what we've done with the Collier County interactive growth model, but this is a model that our Board of County Commissioners has adopted that we use, and we go back and we can actually true up what was speculated and what actually occurred. And so using that model and actually looking at the addresses, the address points that we generate, the permits, the activity that we're seeing in the field, and as I said, the occupancies that's occurring from businesses to homeowners, this is really more accurate of a forecast that we believe we're going to see in future growth going forward in the years. New construction permits. Now, without doubt, in these next few slides, I think it's already predetermined, but it just goes to show that we are predominantly a residential market. Businesses typically chase rooftops, and what we've seen over time is we continue to see, as those new residential communities come on, then we actually see more resistance where businesses are making other thoughts or perhaps even changing their minds because of the resistance they're seeing, the political landscape, or even more so the costs. So again, we saw a boom in the COVID years, and this is a direct correlation as we've seen it with the cost of money, cost of insurance, the availability of insurance. New construction though, luckily, new construction has been tied back to your floodplain management ordinances that are set by the state of Florida, so flood insurance is optional for many of these new structures that are coming in. So growth in Collier County. So this is actual growth that occurred from 1990 to 2024. Every one of these homes received a CO, and this video loops, but it kind of shows the available lands where they've built, and all of that area there that you would see in the bottom of the screen or to the right, which would represent the east. That's all your open space. That's all your protected lands. That's your Everglades National Park, your Big Cypress, as well as your state parks, and actually those farmlands. And every one of these properties, actually, we know it occurred, it got an address point, someone occupied it, it received a certificate of occupancy. And what I love so much about this is that you see around 2010, around 2010, Ave Maria shows up. And they're only half built out right now. To the far right, just below Immokalee. And then what this represents is really the differentiation between residential and commercial activity. And you'll see here's a commercial business, there's a residential. Almost like a heat map. This shows where your businesses are going. It does not demonstrate the timelines, but it shows you how much, based off of that last map, how much of these lands are occupied by single-family homes, multifamily homes, or businesses. So this is where we talk about why we've seen a little bit of dip in construction. We recognize that the cost of money has certainly expanded. When you're at a construction loan, you're better than at least 1 to 2 points higher with no guarantee that a client couldn't back out. We've seen a sheet of, for example, plywood, OSB. OSB wholesaled for about $8 to $14, and every roof of every home has got OSB on it. And then we saw it during COVID jump up to about $68 a sheet, 8 by 12 sheet. We've seen gypsum board, 5/8 gypsum board, which is just drywall. We've seen it go from about $18 a sheet to better than $50 a sheet. And so we know that between your material and your labor, and on top of which, if you watch this storm, where is it headed to? It's headed to Just like Hurricane Michael, that's where most of our #1 grade pine is grown. So a leaning pine tree, about all they're good for is mulch. So once they get too wet, once they split, these are all lumber mills that require that, which directly affect our markets. Construction costs. So Florida Building Code and Florida statute requires that they provide us every contract or every permit, they provide us an opinion of probable cost, either by the contractor, architect, or engineer. And although they may water that number down and only provide their material costs, we've still seen a correlation between material costs in the market and what we've actually seen reported at the time for taxing purposes. So this is a chart we use predominantly for the complications of construction, what materials are needed, and how the Florida Building Code, as well as any local zoning, has changed towards the cost of construction and also affordable housing. Our floodplain program, and this is another one that goes into your economic development and your cost. So, as I said, 97% of the county is within a special designated FEMA flood hazard area. Collier County has over 61,000 enforced flood insurance policies. In 2021, the federal government signed off on what they call Risk Rating 2.0. Every flood insurance policy up to the first $250,000 is backed by the federal government, by FEMA. And so as a result of that, in order to keep the federal government or the federal taxpayers from paying too much towards these flood-prone properties, what they did is Risk Rating 2.0 allows for that flood insurance policy to go up to 18% per year if you've got a historic policy, so there's no more forgivenesses. Your policy will go up 18% per year until it reaches full market assessment. So, how does that affect affordable housing? How does that affect selling a home? How does that affect a buyer's decision? And in the event that you have a federally backed mortgage, you are required to have flood insurance. So with Collier County, we participate in a voluntary program. It's called the Community Rating System, and it's through the National Flood Insurance Program. And we have a class of 5. Now, we are the only class 5 community in the country that has 97% of your community in a special flood hazard area. We're the only ones. And in order to get to so for every number you drop, you start off at a 10, and imagine every number you drop, it's a 5% discount. And in order for us to get to a 4, you would have to have a stormwater protection plan that would end up in probably cost the taxpayers somewhere between $40 to $100 million of improvements. And so the savings right now is just at about $10 million aggregately. And so that cost is not reimbursable, and it would have to go against the taxpayers. So we have the points, we just don't have the program in place. So it's one of the things that we're looking at as a county as we bring on new developments and all the changes that have occurred in the regulatory scope on how we actually do development and how we're going to store and move and treat water, because beyond it being a commodity, it certainly is a detriment to property owners and what we've seen in construction. Affordable housing. So with the affordable housing program that we are really subject to, it's based off your federal HUD policy. And so if you've got a $104,000 AMI, that means affordable housing means if I'm at a low income, I'm only 50 to 80% of that AMI. So I cannot, or my family cannot exceed more than $50,000 a year, and I cannot pay more than 30% towards my housing costs for my living costs for myself and my family. And it's all based on the number of household members, lawful members. But essentially it comes down to this. We recognize that the cost of construction currently, right now, even for Habitat for Humanity, they're probably hovering at about $220,000 to to $250 a square foot, and those are wood structures. Prime market right now is right at $350 to $400, where inland, Aqualane Shores, Port Royal, 20 years ago used to be $400 to $500. Now the regular market they've closed that gap, and now we're even seeing those markets at better than $1,000 to $2,000 a square foot. But the bottom line is, how can I be able to recover my costs, know that I've got somewhere between a $1,300 to $1,800 reoccurring by door maintenance fee that I've got to put back into that unit, and still be able to make money so that I can make affordable housing. So when we see developers come forward, the Board of County Commissioners, they've been phenomenal. They've asked for the development that comes forward that wants to update their growth management plan or the zoning to put on additional units. They want to see a return to the community at about 30% of those additional units, or of the total number of units. They want to see 30% set aside for affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is defined as up to 120% of your AMI. So if you took 120% of $104,000, times that by 3, you're over $3,000 a month anyway. You're close to market. So rarely do we find that sweet spot of that entry-level employee who really needs that 50% to 60% available in the new market, other than, in fact, it could be Immokalee, it could be Lee County, it could be Bonita, it could be an older structure, maybe in Golden Gate City or East Naples. But the bottom line is that we're not finding that in Collier. And so what we're seeing more congestions on the roads, and as I said, somewhere between 40 and 50,000 employees drive into Collier County every day. Live Local Act. So with the Live Local Act, this was based off of Senate Bill 102, now Florida Statute 125, and essentially it does this. It allows for a property owner to look at alternatives so long as they're willing to dedicate a certain percentage of those units for 30 years towards affordable housing, not to exceed 120% of your AMI, your local AMI. I don't know that Live Local was ever intended for Collier, being that Collier now has one of the largest AMIs, not just in the state, but clearly in the country. So with that, it does not apply to PUDs. So if you've got a zone PUD, we're talking about straight zoning, it does not apply to industrial, and it limits that property owner to no more than 25 units per acre. That's the highest density that's allowed outside of a PUD in Collier County. So how many properties are available? Well, we've worked with a number of different developers. The Board of County Commissioners and the taxpayers of Collier County put together the surtax that set aside $20 million, and we found one. The McDowell project, which is currently ongoing down off of just south of East 41, East Trail, along 951. But again, the community response has not been positive. We recognize that we certainly absolutely need it. But as these communities have become established, it's not any more NIMBY, it's more nope, not on planet Earth. So we have found that. Some of the housing developments that we've been involved with, we spoke today, Pulte Group, the Pulte Foundation in Immokalee, the Immokalee Fair Housing. This is Ecos on Santa Barbara. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's actually been a great project. That was county-owned land where McDowell Partners came in. There was some tax credits as well as some impact fee credits that they were able to meet. They've dedicated that property for 30 years as affordable housing. And I will tell you is that if I know the commissioners had walked through their fit and finish, high-end finishes, and they've kept this community great. So if you ever get the opportunity, I believe it's right by the fire station across from Countryside. I've been there. It is a really well thought out project where we took a small piece of property that was once going to be used for a small emergency operations center, and we turned it into community housing. Great location. Also, we've got, this is the Ecos on Collier Boulevard. This is the one I was speaking of. This is down just south of US 41 along Collier Boulevard. And you can see off to the left, it's a unique parcel that was already zoned for commercial. So this one fit live local. It's large enough, they can make it work. Believe it or not, the property that sits behind them is owned by the Department of Transportation. So they're using that for water management. They're using that, they've teamed up with them. And it's in a location that will benefit both that eastern Collier area and Marco Island, and who also desperately needs affordable housing for their workforce. Housing developments, Cadenza at Hacienda Lakes. This is another really good program. It didn't come without feedback from the community, clearly. But what we're finding is that there's unique opportunities and still unique buys out there for these properties where you can take advantage of housing credits and really just making the numbers work. Recognize that some of their financing may not be conventional, some of them may be private investors, or they could have qualified for federal dollars that allowed for them to offer these products. Mockley Fair Housing Alliance, this was what I spoke about earlier with regards to some of the offerings that we're looking at in the Mockley, as well as the Teal in Golden Gate. The Teal is the old Golden Gate Golf Course Hotel. A company called Styx came in, and it was the first time ever where we had taken a 50-plus-year-old hotel. We rewrote the code to accommodate them and presented it to the commissioners. It was sorely overdue and so well supported by our Board of County Commissioners and our Planning Commission, where we took an old hotel, turned it into efficiencies, and by its own design and square feet, it'll be affordable. And oh yeah, by the way, they didn't seek any tax credits or any dollars at all from the local community. They've done this design all the way from South Carolina down the coastline. They're one of the largest employer housing providers for Universal Studios and Disney, and they just go around and buy old hotels and convert them. We're so excited to have them, and we're so hopeful that this market will accommodate their needs, and we'll see more of this. Some of our recreational projects, because these are very big for the community, Great Wolf Lodge. Anybody here at Great Wolf Lodge? Okay. Great Wolf Lodge was a very complicated project. 600,000+ square feet with a water park, each one of those pools independently operated, and you're putting a hotel, you're putting gas lines, a lot of electric, a lot of kids, a lot of employees, and a lot of people all in one location. It's the only one that was ever built, first one that's been built in the state of Florida. It is a very, very complicated project. And so we take our approach just a little different, meaning that we want you to come in. No matter the complications, could be a fence, could be a shed, could be a Great Wolf Lodge, could be a Ritz-Carlton. We're better off having that cursory review. We're better off sitting down with you or your client to understand what are they trying to do, what do they hope for, and then let us help you, because we're free, we're already paid, in order to be able to navigate you through that process. I will tell you that Great Wolf Lodge went through 3 submittals. Now that's not too bad. The golf course that we're working on currently, that's county-owned land, it went through 6 submittals before it was approved, predominantly because they kept changing the plans and they couldn't get their state or federal permitting taken care of. But with Great Wolf Lodge, not only did we get them open, but we got them approved even before they technically submitted. So we'd already seen their plans. We'd already sat down with them, because we recognize for every day that goes by, that's a day that a kid doesn't have a memory, a child, a family. But better yet, that's a day an employee doesn't go to work. And the Board of County Commissioners was so committed, they used taxpayer dollars, TDC dollars, taxpayer dollars to put into that, because they recognized, and boy, has it taken off. We've gotten such great reports on how it's looked at as an amenity to our sports complex, as well as to the community, and they're already booked. So if you get a chance, swing by. I know one of our commissioners was there yesterday, and it was really, as he reported, it was amazing. So we're very happy to have them as a partner, as well as anyone else who comes forward. Our Paradise Sports Complex, as I've indicated, they're right next door. We've still got phase 3 to go on that. And we're cleaning, and we brought on our own professional soccer team, the Board of County Commissioners did. So Collier's made the map. We're never going to have a Zamboni, but perhaps we'll have the big kazoos or whatever I'm not a soccer person, I'm sorry. Big Corkscrew Island Regional Park, as we look to those eastern lands. Also, the Naples Zoo, Caribbean Gardens, everyone thinks that's in the city of Naples. It's Collier County. And if you know Jack, their executive director, Jack has been a critic as well as a big supporter of mine, but always there to be able to look at this as an opportunity, and the same thing. So what I would tell you at the end of the day, some of our commercial projects, and they're giving me the cue, our Board of County Commissioners has held us accountable to providing the best service. Our state legislation has done the same. People have property rights and have the right to ask, due process. Our job is not to promote activism or to look at the world through utopian glasses. But if you've got an idea, if you've got a problem, if you've got an opportunity, we encourage you to get us involved earlier, because we've got inspectors out in those fields all the time. 22,000 building inspections per month, divided amongst 55 inspectors, driving better than 100 miles a day. Average inspection time is usually about 2 to 3 days wait. Average permit time is still roughly somewhere between 12 and 17 days. As I spoke with Tim earlier, we don't compare ourselves to anything other than what our client expectations are. You're our client as much as we're here to help you. And so at the end of the day, all of this data is available. We track everything. If you've used our City View data, we encourage you to do so. It's free. It's very front-facing. It's very transactional. All of our GIS data, addressing data, portal data, and we're in the city of Naples, right there off Horseshoe Drive, so we're always willing to help you. And I think, road projects. So, roads, roughly, we've got the Vanderbilt Beach extension. We've of course, Veterans Memorial, the extension from Livingston on to Old 41, and then the Golden Gate Boulevard Wilson widening. We recognize that the traffic patterns, I know I live in that area in the Golden Gate Estates, about 14 miles from the office where I work, and my commute time has gone from 20 minutes to about 50 minutes in season, especially when schools are in. So we recognize that we've seen an increase in those seasons, but even on our road projects, we've seen, in my career early, about 21 years ago, we were about $1 million a lane mile, and that's acquisition, permitting, and construction. And right now we're probably teetering right at or above $5 million a lane mile. So it's very hard to acquire property, as you can imagine. You may have represented folks that actually didn't want to sell their property for a road for easement or lane widening. But at the end of the day, it is very tedious, takes a lot of time. The permitting, believe it or not, through the federal and the state is not nearly as fast as us, but we recognize the need. And so through our 2025, I think what you'll see is great traffic or great opportunities for transportation, and it's all focused predominantly on those eastern lands. So many projects. I think that's it.
Thanks, Jamie. That was great. Yeah, it gives you good oversight of how much they do and how much they figure what's going on. There's a lot to look at. So obviously, for the outlook of what's happening today and what's happening tomorrow here with the growth of Collier County. Our next speaker will be giving you a national perspective now on the housing market. Dr. Jessica Lautz is Deputy Chief Economist and Vice President of Research with the National Association of Realtors. Jessica has been with NAR since 2007. The core of her research focuses on analyzing trends for both NAR members and housing consumers. Through the management of surveys, focus groups, and data analysis, she presents new and innovative ways to showcase results, and she effectively utilizes research data to educate and impact policymakers on research findings in major media outlets and international presentations. Jessica has an interesting educational background. She received her doctorate of real estate from Nottingham Trent University in the United Kingdom, and she also holds a master's in public policy from American University and an undergraduate degrees both in political science and law and justice from Central Washington University. Please give a warm welcome to Jessica, who will present Top Trends in Real Estate.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Who's ready to tack a ton of data right after lunch when everyone wants a nap? Yeah? Are we ready? Yeah. Well, this cold room is going to keep us awake, I think. So the last couple of days, I've been traveling around Florida presenting and sharing this information with realtors. And when I introduce myself at receptions and such, and people don't know if I'm a realtor and how long I've been in business, and I'm like, oh no, I work at NAR. They go, oh goodness, are you okay? The good thing is I'm not an attorney, so I'm like totally fine. I'm busy, but I'm fine. As we look at the real estate market today, it's definitely changing. It's definitely evolving, and I think it's fascinating. So I'm gonna give you 2 slides to level set before we get into the latest trends. So the first one, when we actually look at the real estate market, did you all know that 27% of realtors started since 2020? This is striking to me because as everyone's grappling with rule changes and figuring out what to do with buyer agency, there's some folks out there who are so brand new to the industry, who jumped in when rates were really low and the real estate market was really hot, and now they're grappling with, oh my goodness, this is a different market. And in Florida, you're not feeling it as much as some areas of the country where I go to, and they're like, oh no, it's an extreme buyer's market here. And you're like, oh, okay, so they're really dealing with a huge change. What I also know when I look at this data is that when people join into real estate to be an entrepreneur, to be their own boss, because of their love of real estate, what we see is a lot of people stay in. And their expectation to stay in grows over time. And we see that 10 years of experience is the norm. And so people stay settled. We also know that a lot of firms out there are just mom and pops. We talk about the big names. We talk about the big brokerages. We know the names out there, and you may work for them. But a lot of folks, too, who are independent contractors decide they want to be on their own brokerage. And so the vast majority are just small firms. And so you're grappling with the same things as everyone else in this room. Inventory, affordability, keeping up with technology, now the big changes. And so as we look at that, the struggle is real. And let's go forward. The second thing I want to level set with is that as we look at 2023 and we look at home sales data, it was the lowest sales volume that we've had since 1995. Now, there's a publication that starts with an I who yesterday said, oh, there's an economist who says this is going to be the worst sales volume in 2024 since 1995. We already did that, so that's cool. Now, 1995 for me was yesterday because I'm an old millennial, a geriatric millennial, as people like to call them, elderly millennial. We've heard this term? Yes? No? And as I look at this, I think that 1995 being yesterday was so, but it's not. In 1995 on a Friday night, you'd be hitting up Hollywood Video, Blockbuster Video. Yeah? No one? No one went to the video store. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is fun. Yes. Now, of course, we're spending that Friday night in watching Netflix. But over that time period of 1995 to today, we also have 70 million more people in this country. And so looking at that comparison of 70 million more people, you would expect that we would have the inventory to support all of those people, and we certainly do not. And as we look at the inventory, we know that home prices are continuing to go up, and I'll give you your local data as well, and I know that Brad is really gonna hit it home with the local data after me. And as we look at this, the bidding wars are continuing. Just in the last month of August, when it was sluggish, when it was a slower August than what we normally have, 20% of homes actually moved more than the asking price. There are still bidding wars that are happening in some limited areas at some price points, especially affordable price points around the country. So looking at mortgage rates, this is everyone's big talk of the town right now. Mortgage rates are having their day. And as we look at mortgage rates, I want to talk about a few things. So one is that the expected rate cut of 50 basis points, that was probably stronger than a lot of people expected, but that conversation started heating up and the Fed made that cut. What I'm expecting and what most economists are expecting is that we'll continue to see rate cuts. Now, Jay Powell, in his press conference, went into a lot of detail about housing. He was asked about it a lot from really top reporters around the country. And they said, okay, is this gonna fix housing? And he said, no. The biggest thing that we need to fix housing is more inventory. That is what is going to fix housing when we talk about affordability, that it's not a simple solution. So when you look at mortgage rates, pretty much everyone was expecting that the Fed was going to cut rates. And the mortgage market absolutely understood that. So proactively, we started to see drops in the 30-year fixed over the course of the last month. And it's now, if we use the same reading on a weekly basis, we use Freddie Mac, we can see that mortgage rates are at 6.09%. So what does that mean? Well, for a consumer, if they were to have purchased a home in October of last year, a $400,000 home, and put 20% down, the ideal scenario that doesn't happen very often, they'd have an annual savings of about $4,400 on an annual basis. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a lot of Americans. As we look at local home prices, we try and mix it up here. We just get some different scenarios. You can see pretty substantial savings, $800 a month, $1,400 a month, depending on that home price. And that's where it really starts adding up for consumers. Now, is that gonna fix the ability for someone to save for a down payment, the biggest hurdle to enter into homeownership? No, it's certainly not. The other thing that I wanna give you here, though, is that my challenge to you, I'm gonna give you a few challenges. This is my first one. Tell the truth, get this information out there, because if I open up social media, it is rare for me not to see something that says, I'm gonna wait to buy till interest rates go down to 2%. You're gonna be waiting a very long time. And when we look at this data, what we can see is that historically, mortgage interest rates dating back to 1971, the average is 7.74%. And I have been asked in the last week by an ABC reporter, ABC, that's a major media outlet, when are rates gonna go back down to 3? And I was like, oh, sweetie, they're not. I didn't say that to her because I wanted to be quoted, but I also wanted to keep my job. So I just said, no, so let me talk about the fundamentals. And so I walked him through with her that we were in a very unusual environment. But I think it's really helpful to get that word out, because if I'm hearing it from a reporter and I'm hearing it from social media, that means that your consumers are hearing that. They're not hearing you tell the truth about the fact that this is a lower interest rate than where we were a year ago, and it's also lower than the historical average. When we look at home prices, this is the big question, right? Is the home price gain that we're seeing right now. And I'm gonna show you two little lines here. One is looking at new home prices and one is existing home prices. And it used to be that new homes always had that price premium. But in recent months, what we've actually seen is that new homes are more on par with existing home inventory. And it's a couple of reasons at hand here. One, we still see those bidding wars. So seeing last month that just 20% of homes went more than asking, that's actually slightly lower than where we had been. We had been quite higher than that, actually hitting at one point at the peak about 50% of homes moving more than the asking price. So that's bid up that price with that lack of inventory. The other big factor that we're seeing here too is that new homes are actually shrinking. They're getting smaller. This is a good thing. Home builders who are able to do this, who are able to build smaller units, are actually meeting the needs of consumers. And I'll show you a bunch of demographic data on why that's true. But they often say they can't do that. They can't actually meet those needs. And to be able to do that and make a bottom line themselves, so they build bigger homes. It just makes more sense to go up, to add an extra bedroom. It's free once you have the kitchen and bath in there. That's what I was quoted this weekend by a big builder in Oregon. And, you know, it's unfortunate because there's so many single people in this country who are looking for a property. The other thing I'm going to give you here, too, is we heard a lot about the cost of supplies. Well, one of the things that concerns me right now is reading the news this morning. And as I read the news, I said, oh, goodness, there could be strikes of docks along the East Coast. And if that happens, that's going to impact our holidays, obviously, moving forward. It's going to impact the cost of goods. So we want that to be resolved as quickly as possible. Because if those strikes happen, that's also going to impact the cost of housing and the ability to build a home. Just like anything, like a weather event could happen, and that impacts the cost of goods too. So as we look at that, we have to be looking at the broader economy and just how hard it is to actually build properties today. So let's talk about the income that's needed to actually purchase a home in this country. It is staggering, and it's only been going up. So right now we see that you have to have a household income of about $109,000 in the US to be able to purchase a home. It's even higher in your local area with your local home prices. We actually see it's $225,000 for the qualifying income. Now, I'm going to give a lot of caveats with this one. So this isn't in a beautiful, ideal scenario where you have 20% down for your down payment. And I see some shaking of the heads. If that doesn't happen, it does not. The typical first-time home buyer is just putting down 8% last year as their typical down payment. So that means that the qualifying income has to be even higher. And that's what we've seen grown over time. So what does this mean? Bottom line, well, unfortunately, what it means is that we're leaving out communities of school teachers and first responders, people who we desperately need to have jobs in our local communities to make them work. And unfortunately, they're being priced out of living there. The other thing that we know is that the inventory of existing homes, yes, it went up by double-digit percentage points. And I hope that I know Brad, will have this local data. But giving it to you on a national scale, what I can tell you is that percentages tell lies. Because as we look at the baseline inventory of existing homes right now, what we can see is that even though they went up by double digits, that just means it went up a little bit. Because base level we're under where we were in February of 2020, before, frankly, the housing market went completely bananas. So as we look at this, we desperately need that housing inventory. There's lots of estimates out there. Some economists say that we're short by 2 million, 3 million. NAR says we're short by 5 million. Again, that growth in population of 70 million people in this country since 1995 means they have to live somewhere. And right now we have a lot of people who are doubling up. In fact, at one point in 2020, what we actually saw is that young adults who are living at home went to high teens. Nearly 20% of all young adults moved back home to mom and dad. And in your house, you eventually wanted them to leave, or they had to go back to their job in the city center or back to school. And so they then re-entered into the housing market and the rental market, and they put a lot of pressure into those areas as well. We also know that there are a lot of elderly relatives who are doubling up as well. It is no one's American dream to move into a nursing home, and we know that family wants to take care of each other. And so as there's a changing of priorities, we have seen a lot of elderly adults move in. The other thing that we are seeing, and what I think is important to note, is that there is a big narrative out there that we are in a rental culture, that people want to rent. But we do see demand for housing. There are 2.4 offers for every home that was listed in the last month. There are multiple offers that are happening. Now, this is not as strong as the 5.5 offers that we saw when interest rates were quite low, but it's right along the historical norm here. The other thing that we see, and what I suspect that you see a lot of in your areas here, are all cash buyers. Yes? No? Maybe? Yes. Yeah. So the reason why, well, we know that baby boomers are outperforming in this metric because they're moving to a home that they're going to live in for a long period of time. We also know that more than 50% of vacation home buyers are purchasing with all cash. We know that it is more likely for a long distance mover, someone who's moving 500 miles or more, to purchase with all cash. And we know that more than 40% of mom and pop investors are paying all cash. So you're going to see a lot of all cash buyers. For the last 20 months, it's been about a quarter of buyers overall in the market. That's a very long period of time. If we look at this historically, we're talking about high teens. We're not talking anywhere close to this. At one point in recent months, it actually reached a third of home buyers bought with all cash, which is crazy to me. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. And the reason why we don't forecast this number, but I don't think it is. We're still seeing multiple offers. We're still seeing people gain housing equity. We're still seeing the fundamentals of lack of inventory, which means those bidding wars, which means that this is a cyclical thing which will keep fulfilling itself. And we're going to keep seeing all cash buyers in the market. The other thing that we know is that Florida has positive job growth. In fact, one of the most positive job growth states, if not the most positive in the last month. What we know is that people want to move to where there is positive job growth. And so we continue to see the mountain states, Florida and Texas, outperforming in comparison to other places. Why? Losing population, also negative job growth in that area. When we look at the change in population, obviously people are very attracted to Florida. You make the top of the list always, you and Texas, hand in hand. Other Sunbelt states go under the radar, but obviously the Carolinas, Tennessee, very popular places to move to as well. Sure, pandemic fueled some of this, but this was happening long before the pandemic, and you know this. You feel it, and you've worked with many clients along this line as well. So I don't like people that much. Like, I have to see a lot of people in my job. Like, it would be weird to have a job where I don't see people. And you all are people, so that's cool. But like on the weekends when I go home, I like to read a paper book, not even like a digital one. I like to be in pajamas. You know, that's cool. And I don't want to wear makeup and I don't want to talk to anyone. But unfortunately, my husband likes people. And that's fun for me because that means he commits me to lots of things, including but not limited to decorating for Halloween, which I love Halloween. So we met on an even ground on this one. Yes, we've already decorated. Yes, I'll be buying more. It's okay. Target is there. It's fun. So when I have to talk to people, a lot of the times it's my neighbors, because they're there and they have children and they play in our courtyard and we don't have kids and I have cats and it's just weird. And so I have to talk to them and we commit to doing things with them and they're always out there. But one of the things that I'm repeatedly asked by my neighbors is we live in a very large community. There's 3,000 units. It's very cool because it was actually built for World War II housing for the Pentagon. So very historic area. But it also means there's a lot of transient population there. And we have a lot of renter neighbors with little kids who ride their bikes and it's adorable, blah, blah, blah. Yay, people. So as we're decorating, I repeatedly am asked by like 3 different neighbors, so the mortgage rates have dropped. Does this mean I can buy a home? And I was like, no, dude, like you're a teacher and your husband's a firefighter. Like I love you all. I really don't, but you're not going to become home buyers anytime soon. And you're probably going to move because you're in the military and like this is just not going to happen. And so I can't do that though. Like I can't tell them that, but I'm going to tell you, please do. Okay. So not that, like that's an icky Band-Aid ripping off thing, right? So like I'm just nice. So what I would say though is to please tell the truth about the housing market. So one is the interest rates. This is the second one. We don't see a bubble. We don't see that there's going to be distressed sales today, tomorrow. This is our figure of distressed sellers. So we're asking realtors, did you work with a distressed seller in the last month? Mortgage Bankers Association has another one. It's whether you're seriously delinquent on your loan for the last 90 days. You haven't actually made a mortgage payment. They're also seeing single digits, 2.5%, 3% consistently. CoreLogic also has another one, 3.5% consistently. We just don't see it in the data. We need to build more housing. That is the fundamentals of why home prices are high. That's not the expectation that they're going to come down. Now, as we look forward at mortgage interest rates, I hate to say anything out loud because I'm sure I'm going to be wrong, so it doesn't really matter what I'm going to say. But what our expectation is they'll probably come down a little bit. High 5s When I said fives last week, someone's like, oh yeah, 5%. When is that gonna happen? I was like, no. 5.9 means high fives. Like that is in the 5% range. So this is where I'm gonna say, high fives. The expectation of the mortgage market has been there for a long period of time that they are going to come down. Where we could see a drop in the 30-year fixed mortgage rate is if there is a narrowing of the 10-year treasury, which is traditionally 1.8%, below where the 30-year fixed has been. With uncertainty, that spread has gotten wider and wider. It happened at 9/11. It happened recently with COVID. So we saw that spread get wider. It's become more narrow. So if we see that become more narrow over time, we could see the 30-year fixed come down, okay? So that's what we're gonna watch. As a team, yes, we're gonna tell the truth about these things. Okay, all right, so let me go forward. I have some on international. I am certain Brad has, I'm gonna give you 2 slides. I'm gonna go fast. Yes, Brad? Okay, yeah. Okay, he's got this. Did you know that when we look at international transactions, 20% actually happen in the state of Florida? Yeah, y'all dominate here. You were not surprised by this data at all. The next thing I will give you, they are traditionally coming from Canada. That is the biggest share of buyers that you all are getting here is from Canada. Second is China, Mexico, India, and Colombia. Now this is nationwide numbers and Brad's gonna have local. Okay, moving on to the next topic. All right, demographic changes. So this is my next chart. And this is my favorite chart in the entire world. Every nerd has a favorite chart. Economists love to call them service nerds, I think. I'm just gonna say that I do. But this is my favorite chart. So we got little kiddos born in the last couple of years in the green. You can see there was a little boom there. People had fun when they were at home. And then the bars get shorter over time. And as we look at this, people eventually go to heaven or they become ghosts. That's my understanding of how the world works. And so the bars get shorter, okay? So there's fewer people represented in the gray there. Smack dab in the middle of the room is the blue. And as we look at the blue, we can see that the millennial generation is the biggest generation in the country today. As we look at this, it's not a typo. There is a red bar there, the first red bar, 35 years old. That is the median age of a first-time home buyer today. That is towards the oldest that we have ever seen a first-time home buyer. Historically, if we look back at this, 40 years ago, a first-time home buyer was 28 years old. It has grown dramatically over time. Saving for a down payment, affordability, inventory, all the things we already talked about. But then you add in student loan debt, and at 35, you add in childcare costs, and then you have to get a car or a minivan to accommodate everyone in that house, right? And so suddenly, all of these debts are snowballing, and it makes it hard to save for that down payment. But I want to give you a couple of things here. As we look at this chart, you can see that there's a population boom that happens when people are in their late 20s, early 30s. You can see that on the chart. Those folks are already putting pressure into the housing market. They desperately want to be homeowners. Every survey that's done says that the American dream is still homeownership. So they are putting pressure there. The other thing that I will tell you is that we see another population boom for late teens, early 20s, and that's in the Gen Z generation. We already know that there are single digits Gen Zers coming into the housing market right now, but they are putting a lot of pressure into the rental market too if they have left your house, which I don't know that they have. Many of them are still living at home. As we see these two generations, this is the argument to build more housing, is right here is a demographic argument. Now, the counter argument that I often get is, yes, but there's a silver tsunami that's coming, and all of these boomers are gonna die off and leave all of these homes to young adults, right? You've heard this argument. It's out there. This is a lot of misinformation too. And why I'm gonna tell you this is that as we look at the yellow, you can see that that is the second biggest generation in the US today. And as we look at that, 58 years old, again, not a typo there, 58, the second red bar, is the median age of a repeat buyer today. And those folks are purchasing a home at a much later age than we have seen historically as well. If we look back at this 40 years ago, the typical repeat buyer was 36 years old. That is the age of a first-time home buyer today, essentially. This is a very big difference. And these individuals are purchasing a home with the expectation that they are going to live there for 15 to 20 years. They are not leaving these homes. And I'll add two numbers together. 58 plus 20 equals 78. Okay, I'll let you guys do the math, but I'm just going to say that people plan on aging in place. So as we look at that, the expectation that they're going to leave those properties anytime soon, I think we have to forget that one. The need to build more housing is absolutely here today, and it's not going anywhere. Now, Gen Xers, I didn't talk about them at all. I skipped that generation altogether, and y'all are fine with that because you're used to being ignored. Yes, I know the median age of realtors, and it's right in that Gen Xer range. So as we look at that, I'll give you a couple Gen Xer factors. I will say that Gen Xers were most likely to purchase their first home during the housing boom, most likely to actually have left or lost that home, be underwater, stay there for a longer period of time, but they also have come back financially. They have rebounded and they are doing A-okay. They are a quarter of the home buying market overall right now. What I think is really fascinating when we look at the Gen X population is that they are the most likely generation to purchase a multi-generational home. So they are taking care of aging parents, they are taking care of kids they can't get rid of, they are taking kids of kids over the age of 18, so on and so on. And so as we look at this, 19% of Gen Xers purchased a multi-generational home. That is a staggering amount. That is 1/5 of those home buyers purchasing a multi-generational home. When we look at the household composition of home buyers overall, and we look back at the US population, I want to take us back to the 1960s, where 70% of American adults were married. That is a very large share. In comparison today, where just half of American adults are married. So as a result, we can see this represented in the housing market too. We can see a drop in married couples in the housing market, and we can see a rise in both unmarried couples and single women. And I'll talk about single women a little bit more in a second. But what I have to say is that a really big news outlet today dropped an article that said that co-buying is not great and that people have regrets about co-buying. And so I was like, wow, that's a really fascinating article. Like, did they use our data? And so I read it and I was like, oh no, they didn't use our data. That's interesting. What was their data source? How did they get this? They basically said, and I hope, ladies, you will laugh along with me. They basically said, we're taking this as roommates who are purchasing homes if they have a different last name as the co-buyer. Yep. So good job, Wall Street Journal. It was an interesting decision that they made with that data. Yeah. So I sent it to a lot of my girlfriends and they said, oh, wow, I'm going to ask my roommate to do some things for me today. If we can like split bedrooms and stuff. They're all happily married with lots of kids. And so I just thought that was fascinating. Fascinating article. I said that I was going to talk about it on stage and I'm doing that. Now I'm going to move on. Okay. So 1/5 of all home buyers are actually single women. It is a growing share of home buyers. And why I dwell on this a little bit here is one, when we look at the real estate industry, we also know that 2/3 of realtors are women. It has been a growing share as well. If we look back at that data back in the 1970s, it was a male-dominated industry, and women really have become the biggest share, which I think is interesting. But as we look at home buying, we know that they really prize homeownership too, and they're making this their financial priority. They are more likely to buy with cash, but they are also making the most financial sacrifices as first-time home buyers to enter into homeownership. And why I dwell on this is because they're actually outpacing men. They're 2-to-1 when we looked at men. And in fact, if we look back all the way to the 1980s, men are just flat. They're 10% of all buyers. It's not to say they're nothing, but we do see that women are outpacing them, which I think is fascinating in the data. So I used to talk about all of this really politically charged information, and I would go to this one, and it was politically charged too. So here we are. So we'll just keep going here. And we know that there is a drop in birth rates in this country. As we look at this, we know that people are delaying having children, or they're having fewer children, or just choosing not to overall. And we absolutely see this in the data. It has been well written about a ton. In fact, just 39% of US households do have children in them today. And as we look at this, we can see this reflected in homeownership and home buying trends too. I suspect this could be a trend moving forward in home buying. And the reason why is we see more empty nesters, we see more boomers who are active in the real estate market. So their kids are probably long out of their household now. And as we see this, why does this matter? Well, it's going to change up a lot of factors, including where that person is buying, the number of moves they could be having, the size of the home they need. All of that is changing. And today we see a historic low of home buyers with children under the age of 18, just 30%. It had been as high as 58% back in 1985. So I used to give all of that politically charged data in this hot environment, and then I would say, oh, this is a much lighter note, but it's 2024, and so apparently we're not going to do light anymore. So now I'm going to talk about pets. Yeah. So did you know that 66% of U.S. households have a pet? It is a huge share, and it has grown dramatically. There are so many articles on how pets are being pampered now, and I was chatting before this with PJ, and we were talking about just how we love our pets. I'm not going to detail, but it is truly fascinating. It is a $147 billion business in the U.S. Yesterday, I was listening to the Economist podcast, and it was detailing how people actually are putting their pets on private jets, and that they have amenity kits for their dogs so that their skin doesn't dry out. I kid you not. I was staying in a hotel, and I was looking to order room service, and they have a pet food menu with organic food for your cat and dog that you can order. And I was like, that's better than the human food that I'm seeing on this menu that I'm not going to order. It was really striking. So pets really are a tremendous business, and it should not surprise any of us in this room, knowing how much pets matter now to Americans, to see that 19% of home buyers are factoring in their pets into their neighborhood choice. And when we talk about unmarried couples and we talk about single women, these growing shares of home buyers, it actually gets closer to a third are choosing their neighborhood and their home based on their pets' needs. So thinking about hardwood floors and fenced yards, all of these factors, catios, and so on and so on. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about bridging the gap. And I'm going to give you guys a huge round of applause, in all honesty, because this is actually pretty amazing when I look at the data and I look at Florida and see your homeownership rate here. When we look in the last decade nationwide, we actually have seen a growth in both Hispanic and Asian homeownership rates, and they're actually at all-time highs. And when we look at home buyers overall who are not white, what we know is that more than 50% of them are actually first-time home buyers. They are new home buyers into the market, which means that we're actually adding new households who are net new homeowners. That's impressive. And so as we look at the nation as a whole, what we can actually see is that we have 3.2 million more U.S. households who are Hispanic who are homeowners. We have 1.5 million new homeowners who are Asian households in America today, and nearly 1 million new Black households who are homeowners in this country. And I want to give you some state data here because I think it's really interesting too. Your home ownership rate for all races is higher than what we see as a nationwide whole for every single race across the board. Fascinating. And also for the Asian home ownership rate, it is nearly on par as the white home ownership rate. This is not true in every state at all. I do want to say that the economists who worked on this project this year said, you know, we know a lot of the reasons why we continue to see a gap, and we especially talk about the Black and Hispanic homeownership rate gaps in America compared to the white gap in America. And they said, okay, so we know a lot of the reasons why, and we've really dug into this, and these slides have the citation here of our snapshot of race in America, and some of the reasons why are, especially for Black home buyers, not having a generational transfer of wealth. If you're less likely to have that down payment from the bank of mom and dad, which is always a good bank, then you're probably not going to be a homeowner yourself. It's going to be a lot harder to save for that down payment. We also know that when we look at Black successful home buyers, that they're more likely to have student loan debt in higher amounts, which we talked about being an issue already for all home buyers. That's just a couple of the issues. We also know that the denial rate for mortgages is higher. But then they also said, okay, let's flip it on its head and let's look at this report in a new way this year. Let's look at opportunities for growth. And let's look at a way to bridge the gap. So what they did is they took two metrics. One is the share of renters by each race who can actually afford to purchase a home. And I have to tell you, in your state, it's actually higher than in some states around the country. We can actually see single digits. We can always pick on California, for instance, where they have about 3% of folks who can actually afford to purchase a home. So within your state, we actually can see a higher share. So 26% of Asian renters within your state being able to actually purchase a home, 14% of Hispanic renters being able to purchase a home within your state. They then took it a step further and they said, okay, we already know that age is an issue when we talk about homeownership. We have a lot of kids born recently. We have a lot of folks who are aging, then perhaps they're not going to be homeowners anytime soon. So what is the share of the population who are currently renters who are going to be reaching that typical home buying age in the next 5 years? So looking at that, you can actually see 10% of both Asian and Black renters are going to be reaching that typical home buying age, raised to actually bridge that gap. All right. So I want to end on what I think is a positive note. The third challenge that I'm going to give you is to tell your story. Because again, people are going to tell it for you, whether you want them to or not. When I look at the data that we have on agent use, when I look at that, it is quite positive. But what really strikes me every single year when we look at this data is that 70% of you actually volunteer in your communities. You volunteer an entire day out of your month giving back to the community where you live and you work and you love and you want to bring more people into. Please tell that story. That is a positive story to tell. People want to hear positive stories. They want to hear positive news, even if they hear a lot of bad stuff. And as I look at this too, I also know that nearly 90% of buyers are working with an agent in the last year. They absolutely want an agent. They need your help. We know that there are multiple offers that are happening, especially for first-time home buyers. Having representation as they go through a very complicated process is incredibly important. We know that it's not just finding the right home and opening that home. Looking at your social media, I know the host of things that you all do, and we actually have a website that's devoted to 170 things that agents do that people don't think of. So if you need to borrow any of those things, it's on our website. The other thing that I'll give you too is that 90%, nearly 90% of sellers are using an agent in their home sales process. They need help pricing their home competitively, selling within a specific time frame, making sure they find that qualified buyer, marketing, and doing that all. We also know that there's tons of business models. Every single person in this room has a different one, and we know that full service agents are the most popular right now because it is a complicated process. It is a stressful process, and having your help really does make a difference to them. The last thing I'm going to give you here too is that this is not just a place to call home. This is also Americans' biggest nest egg. When we look at the net worth that is out there for a homeowner versus a renter, what we see, it's staggering. It is 40 times the net worth. The typical homeowner has $415,000 in net worth versus the typical renter of $10,000. We know that that nest egg can be used for retirement. It can be used to purchase a home, perhaps without a mortgage in their future, for remodeling, for putting their kids through college, for that generational transfer of wealth, so on and so on and so on. Everyone's going to use that differently. But that is people's nest egg. And lastly, what you're doing absolutely matters, and it adds into your local economies as well. When we look at the state of Florida, for every home that's transacted, it's $123,000 that is added into your local economy. It is a multiplier effect. It's not just purchasing that home, but it's furnishing that home, and it's everyone else who is involved in that transaction, from title to home inspectors to appraisers and so on and so on. So I want to thank you so much. What I presented today, this is a member benefit. We have a bunch of nerds in our group who are putting out information truly on a daily basis. We want you to use it. We want this to be easy for you to use. Follow us on social media, share what you see, read more if you want to, but it is there for you as a member benefit. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for your insights and perspectives on the top trends in real estate. But geriatric millennial really makes a young boomer feel old, and I'm probably not the only one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, get ready for a glimpse into how the real estate market has performed in Florida, where the market is heading, and what factors will be influencing it in the years to come from our next speaker, Dr. Brad O'Connor, Florida Realtor's chief economist and head of its industry data and analysis department. As chief economist, Dr. O'Connor oversees the research department, which provides realtors, the media, and the public with comprehensive Florida real estate statistics, as well as analysis of issues and trends that impact Florida's economy and the real estate industry. Dr. O'Connor received his bachelor's degree in economics from Ohio State University and earned his master's and doctoral degrees in economics from Florida State University, where his academic research chiefly involved the impacts of land use regulations on housing markets. Please welcome Florida Realtor's chief economist, Dr. Brad O'Connor, who will present residential market updates for Southwest Florida.
All right, I've got the mobile mic so that I can give you the added excitement of maybe falling off the stage. So maybe I better stay over here. Good to see all of you. And gosh, it was great to see Jessica. I've worked with her on a lot of things over the years. NAR and Florida Realtors work pretty closely together on a number of things. And yeah, I do have a lot of the data she was mentioning about Florida that I've brought with me. So why don't we get right into it? Jessica talked about inventory, and the story is that inventories are rising significantly over the last year. The percentage is double digits change, but in most of the country, inventories are not back to pre-pandemic levels. Well, if you look at the Florida data, that's not necessarily the case. In Florida, there are many parts of our state that actually have inventory levels currently that exceed pre-pandemic levels. We've got a lot more inventory, though, pretty much wherever you go. There's only a couple of exceptions, but substantially more inventory now. As of the end of August, Florida has about 50% more single-family inventory than it did a year ago, and about 75% more condo inventory. Okay, so that's a significant increase. But we are coming from a very low point. So let's talk about maybe the potential causes here. Jessica mentioned a couple of the theories that are out there: the silver tsunami, or the Airbnb bust, or why are we seeing all this inventory? I can tell you that one thing my team has been doing as of late is we're taking MLS data, looking at what's being listed, matching that with tax roll data, so we can find out the age of the structure. For condos, we're looking at that too. As you all are aware, we have the recent condo legislation that has caused some consternation in certain parts of the state. So we're looking for, okay, are the age of the buildings being listed now, are they significantly older than maybe 5 years ago compared to the housing stock that's not being listed? And we're not finding a huge change there. Predominantly, we're seeing slightly older condos being sold and listed now than before, but the housing stock has aged in a large part too since 5 years ago. So not seeing much of that. We've used any public data we can get our hands on. We've used voter records to approximate how old people are in certain houses that are being listed, and we're not finding a difference in the age of people listing compared to 5 years ago. People are about the same there. So a lot of these theories, there might be some truth to them, but there's no one single reason why inventory is higher than it was last year. We can look at the condo reserves requirements. That's not causing new listings to ramp up. That's what a lot of the articles will hint at. They'll say condo inventory is up. It's because of a flood of condos coming onto the market. I'm going to show you the data that says we're not seeing a flood of condos coming onto the market. The short-term rental market could go bust. We could have the silver tsunami. My favorite explanation is, of course, things are messed up there. It's Florida. That's the one you see on social media the most. That's a lazy excuse. One of the reasons why Florida Man exists is because we have some of the most transparent public record laws in the country, so it's easy to get your hands on, any kind of report about someone who's done something stupid and been arrested for it. But another reason, it could be Florida, is because they hate us for our freedom. Here's active listings at a statewide level. I've broken it up to single-family homes and condos. So there you can see it's somewhat similar to the one she showed you at the nationwide level, but you've got, you can definitely draw a line across where we're at now and see that single-family home inventory is roughly where it was in that pre-pandemic 2014 to 2019 period. And condo inventory actually a tiny bit above where it was. That's where we're different than the rest of the country. The rest of the country hasn't gotten back to that pre-pandemic level yet. But we're not, look at the left side of the chart. A lot of these people are saying that inventory is up, therefore housing crash. Housing crash happens when you look at the very, very left side of this chart. That's the kind of inventory you'd need to see flood the market to see real significant price declines. Not that you're not starting to see some price reductions and things, but if you want to crash the market, you're going to have to do better than just adding back to the inventory we had prior to the pandemic. You can look at this in terms of months of supply, and if you go by that 5 to 6 months of supply rule, which you shouldn't if you live in Collier County and work here, because your month's supply should be higher because you're a luxury market. But if you're going by the 5 to 6 month supply rule, then anything above that is a buyer's market, and anything below is a seller's market. Then you could say, arguably, that in Florida, condos and townhouses are in a buyer's market at large, and we're still in a seller's market for single family, but it's close. Bottom line is it's definitely a little bit brighter for buyers than it was, but we still have our problems. So let's look at it by county. This is each bubble here represents how many active listings we had at the end of August by county. I hope you guys know where your county is. I can point it out. It's right there. Geography, United States, we get made fun of for that too. Now I'm going to light it up and show you, okay, this is how much your inventory changed from 1 year ago. So August 31st, it says July, but that's a lie. It's August. I just forgot to change the word on it. So as of the end of August, I don't see anyone down. Everyone's up by quite a bit. That's the number that's going to grab a headline. Oh my God, our inventory has doubled. Just like we will see, oh my gosh, the foreclosure rate has doubled. If the foreclosure rate doubles from 1% to 2%, who cares? Right? So you'll see a lot of headlines if the foreclosure rate goes from 1% to 2%. Oh my gosh, we are, back in 2010, our foreclosure rate was 12% in Florida, right? That's a big foreclosure rate. Same thing with inventory. Inventory has gone up, but from a low base. Now, one thing I would like to show you is, okay, that's compared to last year when we had really low inventory by historical standards. Why don't we make a comparison between what our inventory is now and, let's say, 2019, right before the pandemic started? Because that's when the market was last normal. If we do that, then even though that graph I just showed you shows that statewide we're back to our pre-pandemic level of inventory, it's not evenly throughout the state. Really, the counties that are holding down most of these counties actually have significantly higher inventory than they did pre-pandemic. That's real data. The only reason our statewide inventory isn't higher is because of Miami-Dade County and Collier County to a degree. And then, there's a couple smaller counties over on the East Coast too, but this is where we still actually see less inventory. This is the only part of the state where we're really seeing less inventory than we did prior to the pandemic. Up in Lee County, up 27%. Now, I know for a fact there might be some new construction leaking into the MLS data there. That's part of why we have more, but if you want to even go by zip code, I don't have the percentages on here, but orange means lots more inventory than a year ago. So throughout most of Southwest Florida, that's from Lee County down to Marco Island. And then compared to 5 years ago. Other than central Lee County and obviously the islands, the barrier islands out in Lee County have special circumstances, but through most of, Bonita all the way down through Collier, wet coastal Collier down to Marco Island, we have less inventory than we did a year ago. So it's not necessarily isolated to one area, or this is versus the pre-pandemic. So less inventory than pre-pandemic through a lot of Collier. So let's look at this. This is not a hurricane spaghetti model. This is new listings by year. So each line, each color is a single year. That's so you can see the seasonality in new listings, where it's typically pretty high starting out in Collier County for the year, and then dips in the summer, and then vacation season starts again, and it starts to lift up. And then on the right side, I've got annual new listings, so you can just see it for yearly totals. Let's focus in on last year. Last year was actually kind of an anomaly for most of the state, in that it was actually a low year for new listings compared to recent years. Here in Collier County, or next door in Collier County, we had pretty typical new listings numbers. And here's 2024, where apart from January and February, we've pretty much tracked with the 2023 level of new listings. Obviously, that's a big gap in January and February, but besides that, it's been pretty much tracking the same. I'm going to actually change the right-hand side, so instead of looking at annual new listings, let's look at year-to-date, and that way we can put 2024 in there and compare it, because we don't obviously know what new listings will be the rest of the year, but to this point, we've had 10,000 new listings in Collier County. That includes single-family, condo, and townhouse. And that's significantly more than last year, primarily because of that strong January and February for new listings, okay? But look across all the years that I have on this chart. Remember during the pandemic when we kept saying, we don't have any inventory. There's no one listing. Actually, about as many people listed during the pandemic as normal, right? It's just that the homes sold in 3 seconds. So when you would go check, okay, how many homes are on the market? There would be none, because they were already gone. But if you look 2024 so far, our number of new listings is the same as our pre-pandemic years, 2018 and 2019. Where I do see difference, and by the way, I can go back to Collier. I could show you single family by itself, and I could show you condo by itself, and it's the same pattern, which is why I didn't put it in here. Condo listings are about exactly the same as they were 5 years ago. And so are single-family listings, which is why your overall number of listings right now is lining up so closely with those pre-pandemic numbers. If we're worried about the condo issue, then we would expect, what all these articles are saying is that, condo inventory is exploding. Well, where would we find that? Well, let's look at Lee County. This is the Lee County data, and you see here that Lee County new listings are actually up this year relative to pre-pandemic. And that's actually more of what most of the state looks like, is that we've got elevated new listings this year. If I just show you the townhouse and condo data for Lee County, though, you can see same thing all the way across. So where we actually have the excess new listings for Lee County is not townhouses and condos. The excess all comes from single family. We've had about 5,000 to 6,000 listings every year consistently for townhouses and condos in Lee County. So how is inventory going up? And yet, new listings aren't appreciably up that much. Well, that's because inventory is mistaken often as a supply indicator. Inventory is not a supply indicator. Inventory doesn't tell you what supply is. Supply comes from stats like new listings or new construction. Inventory is more like price, in that it is a cross between demand and supply. It's determined by both. Inventory goes up when you have a new listing, but it also goes up if you pull a listing off the market, or it goes down if you pull a listing off the market or if the listing sells. So demand can pull down inventory, right? So inventory is kind of the cross between supply and demand, just like price is. So I already explained, one way you can have a higher inventory is if homes take longer to sell. If they're not selling in 5 seconds, they're more likely to be counted as inventory. That's starting to happen. You're seeing median time to contract, or median days on market is what your MLS is going to call it, is going to, that's rising back to pre-pandemic levels. It's not quite there yet for single family, but for condos and townhouses, it's getting there. So that's one way you can see an increase in inventory without, even though we haven't had a substantial increase in new listings. Same thing in Lee County. Actually, Lee County's got a little bit higher for condo. Now you can see, okay, we might have some higher inventory in Lee County because condos aren't selling as fast. And that's because we probably have some people who are stubborn about price reductions who want to list, or maybe are just not that motivated to sell, but are listing. You can also look at price reduction. One way we do it on our stats, but there's many ways to look at the data. You can count the number of price reductions or count the percentage of homes that had a negative price change versus a positive. One thing we do at Florida Realtors is look at, for each home, what percentage did it sell for relative to its original list price? And then we find the middle number out of all the homes that sold. So, recently those numbers have been around 93, 94%, meaning, the closed price was about 94% of the original list price. Historically, we're going to be in the low to mid 90% range on this statistic. It obviously ballooned during the pandemic when you could make up any price you wanted and list price you wanted, and the house would sell. But now it's not. We're seeing price reductions. That's a little concerning because it's a change in direction. But the prices that among the closed sales we're having relative to the original list price, we're not seeing a huge difference yet, right? Look back during the housing crisis of the 2010s. If you start seeing them that low, then that's a big concern. You can look at the same thing with Lee County. Now, Lee County, we're starting to see a little bit of a drop with condos again. So always important with median data to be careful, though, because you want to make sure that it's not just because of a different class of housing is selling more than it used to. So something to be a little concerned about. So the stories about condo inventory, if you're seeing it anywhere, are right to a degree that there is more inventory now, but it's not because of a flood of new listings. It's because what is being listed is not gathering enough interest and is forcing price reductions or sitting on the market longer. So it's actually a demand side issue. If to the extent that the condo legislation is affecting people's behavior, it's on the buyer side. Buyers are being more tentative and a little more careful when looking at buying a condo right now, and they don't want to get themselves into a situation. Where you guys can help is do research for your buyer, like read the minutes of the condo association, figure out, ways you can, these are all excellent ways to assist a buyer and show that we are more than people who look up listings for you on the MLS, right? So do a little research, know your condo associations and what's going on there in terms of handling the legislation, and wherever we are going with that. Maybe we're going into a special session and the rules get changed. I don't have any inside information on that yet, but let's look at sales. Collier County sales. This is where our inventory issue is coming from. So where we're getting more inventory in a lot of the state is partially because of higher new listings, but it's more so because sales have been so depressed. And so stuff is sitting on the market longer, and that's raising our inventories. You can see our sales compared to last year are pretty similar in Collier County, but they are below where they were in 2018 and 2019. So far this year, there have been 7,000 closed sales, and we were at above 8,000 in both 2018 and 2019 by this point in Collier. Over in Lee, somewhat similar story, although we are actually a little ahead of the 2018 and 2019 pace now. The only thing I can explain that with is just how much housing has been put in the ground in Lee County, which we're a state that builds. Our previous speaker, Jamie, talking about what was his nope, nothing, not on planet Earth. We're not generally a nope state. We're actually a pretty building-friendly state, and obviously he runs into frustrations every single day because there's a never-ending list of things that can go wrong when you're trying to put construction in the ground. But relative to other states, we build a lot here in Florida. We're pretty lucky to have that. That's helped keep housing affordable to this point. But we are running into problems with affordability, so it's urgent now more than ever. But besides Nope, the one I use is Banana. Have you heard that one? That's build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. That's the California term that I've borrowed. Now you're seeing also in Lee County, and this is where a lot of the Lee County inventory is coming from for condos, is just, again, lower sales. So again, part of that, it's kind of unfair to analyze this area because we're still, in some parts of our market down here, we're still recovering, right? I mean, we haven't forgotten about Ian down here. There's a constant reminder, where you go. So everywhere you go. So part of it is that, but also I just think there's a hesitancy about getting into the condo market right now because there's been so many negative headlines that have been partly misleading. But there's a lot of reasons why demand overall is weaker this year. I know I'm very depressing. I'm getting you ready for Elliot, who will probably stage dive at some point. So be ready, Bill. High mortgage rates. This was already covered by Jessica, just showing you the Fed rate versus the mortgage rate. This slide to tell you the green line being the Fed rate. She already covered it. The orange line actually anticipates what's going to happen to the green line and moves first. That's what's happened here. The reason why rates didn't drop after the Fed announcement is because everyone predicted the Fed announcement was going to happen, so the market already adjusted for it. So we optimistically, I think we could get down as far as 5%. I would also tell you very optimistically that there's a 99% chance I'm wrong because there's nothing economists are worse at forecasting than what interest rates are going to be a year down the line. I could, Goldman Sachs or the big banks, Wells Fargo, or these giant think tanks in Washington can employ hundreds of forecasters who cost a lot of money, especially to employ them in that market, and they can give you, a quarterly forecast for what the interest rate will be. It is always wrong. I've only got a team of 4. I'm using your dues money, so I figure, why would I want to spend my time forecasting something that if they can't get it right, I won't get it right? So, that's not how I spend my time, being wrong about what interest rates are going to be. I will give you, just my range. Lawrence Yoon, by the way, I don't know if Jessica shared this. I wasn't paying attention at that part of it, but Lawrence thinks we're kind of capped. Our floor is 6%. And that's because he's a deficit hawk, and the deficit does, there are issues there that could keep the interest rate up there. I think we can get a little below that. Jessica referenced the spread of the 30-year and the 10-year Treasury, which is historically high for what it normally would be. You can see how the 10-year Treasury, the blue line, is a lot more closely aligned with our mortgage rate, the orange line, than what we saw with the Fed rate that is manipulated. That's a short-term rate. So I would plan for that. And I agree with Jessica. We shouldn't make any proclamations that we're going to see rates below 5%. If we do get to that point, that's because something horrible has happened to our economy and the Fed needed to grease the wheels again. So we just need to, basically we're in a holding pattern. We've got to wait for incomes to catch up to where housing prices leapt to a couple years ago. Until then, we're kind of in a holding pattern where we're going to see lower sales, but prices are going to be fairly steady. I'm going to skip this rest of this mortgage rate part because she covered it, but I'm showing you basically the same data. On the bottom here is a different way. She was showing you what income you'd need to buy a home in this area or in the U.S. overall. I'm showing you on the bottom chart what your estimated payment would be on a 30-year fixed mortgage, 20% down, which again is bigger than most down payments, but just for consistency's sake. Just another way to look at how affordability has eroded. On principal and interest only, the typical Florida home purchased in 2019 would be about $1,250. I've inflation adjusted it, so it would have been less than that. And now it's well over $2,000. That's just a huge, and that's not even accounting for property tax and your HOA fees, and your insurance. So it's just a tough pill to swallow. Rising property insurance rates. It's been pretty amazing to see how fast property insurance rates have gone up in recent years, and it's hard to put our finger exactly on the cause because a lot of the data and information by these insurance companies is a trade secret, and they have their own strategies. Either they've completely changed how they calculate risk and have decided that Florida is much more at risk than they used to think. That could be one reason. But look at how many Florida hurricane landfalls we've had. It's not, over time, generally, we're actually seeing less landfalls per decade by hurricanes than we do now. Although I would say we're not even halfway through the 2020s yet. So, I haven't even added Helene to this yet. And if you just look at major hurricanes, the kind that really, can trash your property, it's been fairly even, but it's lopsided data. Look at the 2000s. I think all 5 of these hurricanes were in the same consecutive years, 04 and 05. So it's kind of spotty. We had 4 Cat 4s hit us in the 1940s. I think it was in consecutive years. So we obviously would like Helene to dissipate or just disappear off the planet, and it sucks that our state's going to get hit. From an insurance perspective, this is the best place for a hurricane to hit, and I hate to say that because there is no good place for a hurricane to hit. But here I added the just value of every property in every county, and I subtracted out the estimated land value, which is not really a very scientific way of doing this, but it basically kind of tells you how much does property outside of land, how much is it worth in each county. And the place where it's projected to hit is the part of the state that has the lowest, value that needs to be insured. And just, this hurricane comes up this way. It comes up along the coast. We know very well down here that just a slight deviation when it's coming up parallel to the coast can mean absolute disaster. The hurricane only has to move a couple degrees to the right to hit, let's say, Fort Myers instead of Tampa. We learned that the hard way. Whereas if it's going straight at the coast, a deviation a little bit left or right is still going to end up putting the hurricane in the same place. If it's coming along the coast, it could dramatically change where it comes ashore. We're lucky with this hurricane in terms of, again, insurance, that it's going in this direction. If it had deviated a lot more, there's a lot more property that could be destroyed. And again, heart goes out to everybody from Cedar Key up to Apalachicola who are in the path of the storm. It's not looking good, and I hope that it's not as bad as they think it could be. Tallahassee was my home for many years, so I'm worried about them. Rising property insurance rates, obviously, so we may be avoiding something that could have been far worse, but this is going to bring the spotlight back onto property insurance in Florida. Beyond hurricane forecasting being difficult. By the way, it's kind of a hobby of mine. I'm really, since I was like 6 years old, I've been fascinated by hurricanes. And as an economist, I want to figure out why the meteorologists are more accurate than I am. So I've studied their models some. Now their track forecasting, like figuring out where stuff is going to go, is still like scads better than it was 20 or 30 years ago. Where they're lacking is intensity forecasting, so they can kind of tell where the hurricane's going to go a lot better than they used to. But they're not going to know how strong it is. Like that rapid intensification stuff that's been happening recently with Michael and Ian. Ian was this close to being Cat 5. That's something they're not as good as predicting. They're trying to work on it. But the thing that meteorologists are worse at predicting is how many hurricanes will be during the season. They are always way off on that. Remember, we were supposed to have like 50 hurricanes by now, and we're only on letter H. So that one, never trust that one. That one's always wrong. But that doesn't mean that they're always wrong about everything. They're just always wrong about how many hurricanes there will be during the season. So we've had fewer hurricanes than anticipated, but I just showed you by decade, it's hard to predict how many hurricanes you're going to have. It does not seem correlated with the temperature of the Earth, although that's, I'm sure, a factor. Now, remember, the temperature of the Earth affects not just the sea temperature, it affects the air temperature. Different air temperatures, this is a physics lesson now, different air temperatures are going to change air pressures. It's going to change wind patterns, is what I'm saying. That wind flows from high pressure to low pressure areas. So it could be that hurricanes get worse because the sea is heated up, and yet maybe they're all getting blown in a different direction than Florida going forward. I don't know that. The meteorologists know that. None of us are experts on this. I would hope the insurance companies hire some of the people who are so they can accurately assess risk. But the other issue that Florida insurers have had is we are one of the most litigious states in the country. In fact, up till recently, we were, 8% of property insurance claims each year. We were 80% of lawsuits involving property claims nationally. So less than 10% of all the claims, but those generated 80% of the lawsuits. A lot of loopholes there. The legislature did close that, right? They closed those loopholes. The only problem with when they closed it, everybody went and sued right before it went into effect. So we have a backlog now of lawsuits. So it actually hurt the insurance companies in the short run. But in the long run, this is going to bring back more competition in the insurance industry. We hope some of the bigger insurers, we're seeing some signs that that's already happening. Currently, the only headlines I see about insurers leaving a state are about California right now. But I'm not seeing that for Florida. I'm seeing stories about some insurance companies deciding to move back into Florida. More competition is good. It's going to help keep rates from going higher to the extent that they can. So at least we have that to look forward to. But it's not like an overnight drop in insurance rates is in the cards. We can only hope to slow down the growth. Let's see what time it is. Okay, I'm almost out of time. So rent growth has slowed down. You always weigh between buying and renting for most buyers, and they're going to, if rent growth has slowed, because rent growth was really skyrocketing, just like home prices were there for a while, it's going to change your calculus a little bit. You might be a little more inclined to rent now. We've already talked extensively about condo reserve requirements, how I don't think that's leading to a flood of listings. What it's leading to is buyers being more reticent, and thus those that are being listed might be staying on the market a little longer. And in-migration has slowed. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly, but in Collier County, as of the 2023 data, 2,500 people in 2023, or 2022 to 2023, 2,500 people moved to an owner-occupied home in Collier from abroad. About 9,500 moved from another state. A little under 5,000 moved from another county in Florida. And a little over 8,000 moved to an owner-occupied home from elsewhere in Collier County. So just a reminder, I actually talked about this with Rick Fioretti, one of the last times I saw him, how we like to focus on people moving from another state or from abroad, but just remember there's also a lot of potential buyers within your very county, right? 8,000 there last year. Now, you've seen a lot of migration data from our previous two speakers. The only problem with that is that it's outdated. I think, a lot of that came from 2022. So if you want to see something more recent, Florida Realtors has been collecting data on driver license exchanges. You move to Florida, you change your old state's license in for a Florida license, and they write down which state you came from, and that's where this data comes from. So it's your local tax collector's office forwarding the data to the Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle Department in Tallahassee. That's statewide. I've got by county. This shows your biggest feeder counties year to date for this year in terms of if we're just going by who changed a driver license in. And you can see Illinois and New York are clearly the two largest states, feeder states for Collier County. That's historically been true. If we compare that to where we were at this point last year, though, we're seeing a lot less people moving in, or at least exchanging licenses than we did previously for most of these states. The only exceptions are Texas Arizona and some of the in Tennessee and looks like North Carolina, and then some of the smaller states in the South. But the Rust Belt and the Northeast, we're seeing significantly less. That's a trend we're seeing everywhere. We were never going to maintain the rate at which people were moving from the Northeast or California, in 2021 during the pandemic when those places were largely closed. The people most likely to move have already moved. They are still, staying here and telling their friends. I think we've generated more demand to live in Florida than we had pre-pandemic. It's been a very positive story nationally. But obviously, we're not the rate we were. Now, if we want to compare where we are now compared to 2019, this is a habit that I have of looking at 2019 right before the pandemic and comparing it to now. It's just those Rust Belt states primarily and some of the Northeastern states where we're seeing less, but we're still seeing 27% more New Yorkers exchanging licenses, seeing a lot more Texans, we're seeing a lot more folks from the Pacific Northwest, and even still 8% more Californians than we were seeing before, right? So basically, people are still moving from places that are high priced. They've got a lot of home equity because they're coming out of markets where they've had high income and a high home value, so they can afford our market still. That's where we're seeing people. People like from Ohio, where I'm from, we're not really going to be able to afford Naples at this point, nearly as much as we could before. So. Lee County, by the way, pretty similar numbers, although down even from New York. This is my only international slide, and this just shows you the general trend we've seen is that going into the pandemic, we've never seen such a small percentage of sales in Florida be by international buyers, and that doesn't appear to be improving. In fact, I can't even get you guys to answer my survey that I've already emailed you 4 times about. We've only got about half the responses, so you're going to get more threatening emails from me over the next 2 weeks. We're going to try to get a few more responses. We are still, by the way, 20% of all foreign buyers in the U.S. are buying in Florida. So Jessica's data isn't that wrong, but and obviously here the Latin American buyers are primarily concentrated in Miami-Dade. Here it's all about Canada and Western Europe, but mostly Canada. And Canadian buyers, just from what I've seen in the data and from anecdotal evidence from you, just seem not to be as interested as they were pre-pandemic. That's fine because, again, New Yorkers have more than made up for all of the foreign buyers. So, and Californians. Job growth I'm going to go through really quick. If you annualize how fast our rate of jobs was growing from 2019 to 2023, then about each year, Florida grew the number of jobs in Florida grew by about 2.2% versus nationally, it only grew by less than 1%. So this is going from 2019 to 2023 on an annualized basis, including the period where we had all those layoffs and then came back. You can look at healthcare, finance and insurance. We're really outperforming the U.S. there. You think about all those finance jobs coming down, and scientific, technical jobs. We're talking SpaceX, all those kinds of things, and the professional jobs. Unfortunately, that means more lawyers and economists. But that's great. Now look at the last year, though, our change. We're seeing more growth in healthcare, but the U.S. has surpassed us. They've got jobs to make up there. Employment growth, we're about where we were, but the rest of the U.S. is catching up. And these higher paying jobs, growth has really slowed to a halt there. But that's happening nationally too. Rates were so high there for a period. It's not like the banks were saying, let's expand. I mean, maybe that'll happen now that rates are coming down. So I'm going to skip through these, but it just shows you which industries we're gaining jobs versus the U.S. versus which ones we're not. There's no real big story there to tell. We already talked about millennials, so I'll skip my list as to why millennials are facing a difficulty. The last one, lack of basements in parents' homes. That's what Jessica won't tell you, is that her analysis failed to recognize that we don't have basements to put our millennials in. So where do you put them? The lanai? Just to generally communicate where prices are for Collier County, including condos and single family and everything, home prices are pretty much, kind of in a holding pattern over the last 3 years, ever since rates went up. That's what you would expect. Inventory has risen. The demand for homes has declined because of that. But you still have to take into account that you guys had an 88% median sale price increase. I think that's one of the highest of any county in our state, easily. If you look at Lee, that's 5-year growth, but really all of that growth happened in a 3-year period. That's only 65%. Only 65% compared to Collier's 88%. And statewide, it was only 56%. So a lot of the price growth down here in Florida has been in Southwest Florida. You're just going to pay for that, and that it's going to hurt, how many people can afford homes down here, and it's going to limit your customer base. It's a trade-off for dollar volume. I'm not going to say anything about commissions. I never do. But I am going to say that this is correlated to your earnings, right? Is how much money is flowing through the housing market. And you can get dollar volume to go up in 2 ways. You can have more sales, or you can have higher prices. Both of them work. Okay, so right now, I'm just saying, turn that frown upside down and be thankful that prices are holding, even though the sales aren't where they used to be, because that's still generating more dollar volume than we saw in 2018 and 2019 by a long shot. My time is up. I told you were going to need a taser. So let's just leave with that thought as I walk down the stairs, because that's the other reason I have this mobile microphone. I thank you for attending, and I appreciate your time. Thanks. You better bring that up. I stole it.
Well, thanks so much, Brad, for your update and outlook on Florida real estate, the market, and for being a Florida man from Ohio. Thank you. Well, now it's a good time, I think, to take a little break. We have a 15-minute break. So please, during this time, visit each of the sponsor tables in the concourse if you have a chance to, and find out about the great services and products that they offer the entire real estate industry. Our program will resume promptly at 3:15. when I will present the changing landscape of Collier County. Thanks a lot. Okay, at this time I'll be switching hats from moderator to speaker. Some of you may know that I am the senior editor and columnist for Gulf Shore Business, as well as our new upstart weekly newspaper, the Naples Press. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we saw a need for a paper that wasn't left-leaning and that actually covered the community with people who live here. So it's good. It's my job and passion, of course. Passion is very important, I think, to know about what is coming in our blessed and wonderful community here. And it's my honor and pleasure to speak to you today about the changing landscape in Collier County. Now, so many development projects are in the pipeline that it was difficult for me to edit down what I wanted to tell you about today. It's more and more difficult nowadays to keep abreast of everything that's happening here and now. And I'm glad that a lot of you follow me to try to keep up. But there's so many potential news stories, and it really is growing exponentially. I've been covering the area as a journalist now for more than 25 years. And if you think that we've seen a lot of changes in the last 25 years, which we definitely have, you'll be amazed at what will occur in the next 25 years. Believe me. Recent population increases are rapidly speeding up the process. And every time I write about a new development coming, especially one along Immokalee Road, people on social media complain that we're going to be the next Miami. And, well, what do you think? I really don't see it. Even if I squint, can't picture Miami being here. But that's what people think. And we definitely are on a growth trajectory, so you can understand it to some point, and it's clearly unstoppable. But not only did a global pandemic, economic setbacks, and major hurricanes not put a dent in it, they accelerated it in many ways along most of the coast here. Now, Collier County's population, as was pointed out earlier today, is more than 400,000 now, and the number of people living here is expected to easily double by build-out. The Collier Interactive Growth Model projects a build-out of 840,000. Jamie didn't have that, and he didn't go past the, I think, 2040 in his presentation, but we're talking about a little farther out than that, 2060, 2080. We're going to see more than double the population we have now. And by then, the majority of the county's population, more than 50% of the people, will live east of Collier Boulevard or 951. Now think about that. That's a dynamic change for the region, as many people that live right now in Collier County, you picture all the people in Collier County, that many are going to be living east of 951. So that's incredible. Think about all the change that's going to mean for what we're doing now. Following the success of Ave Maria, a master plan community that continues to grow, I just found out today from the Ave Maria table out there that they just sold their 5,000 homes now, and which is not even halfway through. I think they can go up to 11,000. So it's impressive, but it's also right. It's going to kind of lead by example the other development that's going to be out there. We're going to see 2 new villages in the town of Big Cypress that they'll have thousands of residents over at least 1,500 acres. Rivergrass Village and the village of Belmar will be master planned communities off Oil Well Road between northern Golden Gate Estates and Ave Maria. And also Barron Collier Companies plans Collier Rod and Gun Club, which will have homes, cabins, a golf course, and more at Oil Well Road and State Road 29, which, by the way, is really the halfway point practically in Collier County. You won't see me call that Eastern Collier, because Eastern Collier is pretty much uninhabitable by humans. Anyway, this will be near where the fairgrounds and swamp buggy races will eventually be held, because those both, the Collier Fairgrounds and the Florida Sports Park, eventually will relocate out there on Oil Well Road, and they'll be together again as they were at one time off of Radio Road before they moved out. As rooftops multiply, you'll see more commercial development east of 951 to supply amenities to residents there. Tractor Supply is under construction at Golden Gate Parkway and Wilson. Sunshine Ace Hardware, which opened a new store last year in Founders Square, also has stores under construction in Ave Maria and in the future Winchester development, which is at Immokalee Road and Orange Tree Boulevard. It has another store coming also to Pelican Bay to fill the space that was vacated by Steinmart. On Immokalee Road, Bear Creek Elementary School is under construction. Naples Classical Academy plans to build a gym on the western end of its charter school, and a child care center will be built on an outlot there in front of Naples Classical Academy. The Catholic Diocese plans its new Pope John Paul II Church with a school on 40 acres it owns at Wilson and Immokalee. A little east, land was just cleared for a new retail center and more self-storage buildings. Grocers have a lot of expansion plans as well. Aldi will be breaking ground soon on a new store at Randall Curve. Publix is building a new supermarket to anchor the future shops at Orange Blossom off of Oil Well. Publix also will backfill more than 2 vacant stores for a new supermarket in the Gateway Shops at North Bay off of Wiggins Pass Road. And they also have plans to demolish 2 existing Publix stores on 41 and rebuild them in Neapolitan Way and in River Chase Plaza. Another grocer will be part of the space vacated by Bed Bath & Beyond in Ridgeport Plaza. Oaks Farm still has not filed plans yet to rebuild its market that was damaged at Hurricane Ian on Davis Boulevard, but I expect that they will soon. A sign that more traffic is coming, unfortunately, local car dealerships have major expansion plans in Collier County. Rolls-Royce, Genesis, Volkswagen, and Lexus all plan new freestanding dealerships here. After Genesis and VW move out, Hyundai and Audi will expand their respective dealerships. And Tesla is building a new service center on Radio Road. And also Naples Motorsports plans an expansive showroom where Rooms to Go recently moved out to a new place. Projects are being built on recently cleared land throughout the county. The second phase of Restaurant Row is under construction near Freedom Square on Collier Boulevard. Interior build-out is underway at the Hammock Park Retail Center on Collier. Tree Farm Plaza, which will have Chipotle and Cava restaurants, is going up quickly at Collier Boulevard and Immokalee Road. And across the street, that's across the street from Founders Square, which will also has some final out parcels that it's building out. The Ritz-Carlton residences are under construction on the spot of the former Beach Box, Beach Store, Daruma, and other businesses there at Vanderbilt Beach. And apartments, which we heard some about today, apartments which once were a means to provide affordable living options have become vehicles to really increase density with luxury lifestyles. Multifamily communities now are being built on planned throughout the county. Aspire Naples is under construction on Immokalee Road across from Seed to Table. Amberlin South Naples and Hammock Park are changing the landscape off Collier Boulevard. Many other apartment complexes have yet to break ground, but they're coming. Ascend Naples and the Matson are planned on Vanderbilt Beach Road. Fiore Apartments and Savoy Park will be near Collier Boulevard and Rattlesnake Hammock. New apartment complexes are planned in Golden Gate Estates, at the Randall at Orange Tree on Immokalee Road, and another one called Emblem at Orange Blossom will be off of Oil Well Road. Other new residential communities under construction, we've heard a little bit about Camus off Collier Boulevard. Torreno at Valencia Golf and Country Club is between Oil Well Road and Randall Boulevard. Opus Stone is going to be a 51-home community at Massey and Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension. Homes in Valencia Trails off of Immokalee Road will eventually reach Vanderbilt Beach Road Extension. So that's going to be a very large community. Areas hugging the coast already are nearing build-out. So, vacant land opportunities that are there are not readily available. For instance, in the city of Naples, you're not going to see a lot of new building on vacant lots because they don't really exist. So we're going to continue to see redevelopment projects where the old is demolished to make way for the new. In Naples, we're seeing this with, of course, the Naples Beach Club redevelopment projects is probably one of the best examples. But there are mixed-use developments replacing the former retail centers that used to be Grand Central Station and the plaza on 3rd Street. We're seeing new development in the works, abutting the city at its northern and southern borders. Perceptually, what this is doing is extending the city without actually extending the city limits. So it's different because they're not actually extending it, but it's perceiving it to be so with the development clustering on the edges, even though it's still in unincorporated Collier County. The best case in point is the Bayshore Gateway Triangle redevelopment area, which is seeing massive growth. Metropolitan Naples, which you've seen the cranes towering over Davis, will be the cornerstone of the mini triangle with its 15-story Aura and Ascent condominiums, which will also have restaurants and retail available. On the point of the corner, a 10-story hotel and condo project are still planned. It's called the Ellington. It hasn't broken ground yet. Likewise, across the East Trail from these projects on more than 4 acres that formerly were the Little Italy restaurant and Checkers Drive-In, you're going to see a new hotel, a JW Marriott, that will be developed by Columbia Sussex with understory parking. And they had initially wanted to do one that was more than 400 rooms, and they since have downsized to one that's more than 300, but that's moving through the process. Immediately to the north of the city, Phil McCabe's new hotel, the Carnelian, will replace a recently closed Beacon Bowl bowling alley. The hotel will have 2 upscale public restaurants and a rooftop private club called Sterling's, that is expected to take the local private club to the next level. And Bev, I know the representative for Bowland is here, and if you have a spot where she can relocate the Beacon Bowl, that would be great. We're hoping that I'll stay up in North Naples. New hotels in general are a local trend, indicating that tourism remains a lifeblood here. There's no doubt. Many recently opened or are under construction, or they're still being planned. The Great Wolf Lodge, which of course was talked about earlier, launched last week with 500 rooms and many restaurants and of course an indoor water park. It's definitely a game changer. Also this fall, Hampton Inn & Suites opened behind the new Lamborghini dealership in East Naples. And within the last year, we also had the AC Hotel by Marriott open downtown with its Limon rooftop bar and the Jimmy Buffett-themed Compass by Margaritaville rebranding Uptown with its 5 o'clock somewhere bar. The Perry Hotel Naples is opening soon next to the Bay House in North Naples, and it'll have the Tigress rooftop restaurant and bar. And there's a hotel on Bayfront. It was first announced as the 239 Hotel, but now it's the hotel on Bayfront. And it will have 8 suites and a ground floor restaurant and a rooftop bar that will be open to the public in the Bayshore Arts District. Also under construction are the 5-star Four Seasons Resort mentioned at the Naples Beach Club, Old Naples Hotel on 3rd Street South, and Echo Suites, extended stay by Wyndham, just started construction last month in Citygate. After this coming season, the Aquarius Hotel, which is targeted to replace the Naples retail strip that has been home for decades to Pastrami Dan's and later Leaky Tiki Barbecue, the Aqua Restaurant and Bar will relocate there from 5th Avenue to the same owner who has Leaky Tiki. So Aqua, and you can't spell Aquarius without Aqua. They'll both be together. And also a True by Hilton Hotel is in the works on Juliet Boulevard in North Naples next to the Town Place Suites across from Walmart. And it's same builder who did the same developer who did Town Place Suites has seen how well that's done, and he's building on the lot right next door to it. We're seeing the owners and managers of some area retail centers making aggressive moves. And whether it's by design or by necessity, they're shaking things up a little bit. At Mercado, they're expanding the central public common areas and adding a permanent event stage. It'll be right there in front of Narrative Coffee. New restaurants coming in include Shake Shack, Waxon's Swedish American Restaurant, the Beeline Cocktail Bar, and Taverna, which is really the reimagined upscale Burntwood Tavern. Waterside Shops has major redevelopment projects on 3 of its 4 corners. The store that Nordstrom vacated in 2020 will be torn down soon, and Restoration Hardware, or RH as it's known, will build a multi-story gallery, as they call it, with a rooftop restaurant there. And it has been confirmed that Eddie V's Prime Seafood, the only Darden restaurant brand that we don't already have here in Collier County, it's coming to the freestanding former bank office at Seagate and Myra Daniels Boulevard. The interior of the former Barnes & Noble 2-story out parcel there will be the new home for Pottery Barn and Williams-Sonoma, which will be moving out from inside the mall. And there's a lot of other movement of new stores that have just recently opened or will be opening. I actually wrote about that for my column that comes out this Friday. At Coastland Center Mall, Rodizio Grill, a large Brazilian steakhouse, will replace a recently closed Aurelio's Pizza. In Grenada Shops, Dollar Tree recently moved into Tuesday Morning's former space to make room for Connor's Steakhouse, which will take over Dollar Tree's standalone out parcel, and expect Connor's to open sometime in 2025. It's been a tough year for restaurants, though, no doubt. We've had a dozen pizzerias close in Collier County just in 2024, which is really unheard of. You don't usually hear pizzerias closing. But more are still coming, of course. So Mr. 01 has a second location that it's planning at 1111 Central in Naples. Also downtown, Pizzeria G, a couple from Long Island, are opening up a slice shop in the former Shays off of 5th, and two pizzeria chains that are new to this area, but they've been around, are Lido Pizza, which is coming to Ave Maria, and Rico's Pizza, opening at Immokalee and Collier Boulevard. Some other new to Naples fast food chains plan to make inroads here, just like Lido's and Rico's. Slim Chickens is a chain that has a drive-through coming to the Randall at Immokalee, the Randall at Orange Tree on Immokalee. Huey Magoo's Chicken Tenders is a place that's also going to have a location on the corner of Bayshore and the East Trail there in East Naples. Not to be undone, of course, Chick-fil-A plans 3 more area locations. One is proposed to replace the Red Lobster restaurant that closed on 41 in Naples, and one will front Collier Boulevard in a new location on Citygate that will be next to a planned retail center that neither has broken ground yet on. And then there's still another one proposed on another Chick-fil-A on the northeast corner of Logan and Pine Ridge, which will be next door to a possible Wawa store and station that will be built. Expect a few more upscale dining options, as well as that. They're going to complement really like places like the new Gulf Shore Playhouse, which opens next month. The chef-driven Saluna Restaurant and Bar replaces Stoney's Steakhouse at Bayfront, practically across the street from the new Gulf Shore Playhouse. Blackbird Asian Fusion Restaurant started build-out just yesterday at the former Bonefish Grill that's at Naples Bay Resort. Still don't have a location for where Bonefish Grill might be relocating. I knew that was very successful for them, so I expect them to probably open up somewhere else. In North Naples, Aqua has another location in addition to one that's coming to the future Aquarius Hotel. They first will open a new one and at the Green Tree Center, which was the old tax collector's office where you maybe went to get your driver's license too. But that's going to be the new Aqua, which is supposed to be nicer than the 2 that they have already in downtown Naples and Bonita. And Joey D's right next door is going to be expanding by adding an Italian market there. Lou Jack's, which is a tribute to Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Lou Jack, is coming to the former space of the Pearl, which used to be the Stonewood Tavern there at Airport and Vanderbilt Beach Road. As people see lots being cleared, they always ask me what's coming, and they're usually hoping for another restaurant. Many times, as many restaurants as we have, people still want more, but they're often are disappointed to find out that it's not going to be a restaurant, and it might be self-storage units, car washes, or dental offices. So if you really want to please, these are the Miami fearmongers. If you want to please them, then throw in a nail salon and a mattress store, and I'm sure they'll be happy. With growth comes infrastructure issues, of course. Road projects can continue. Again, Jamie showed you a slide with a glimpse of it, but Vanderbilt Beach Road will be extended. It's still underway. That's going to take that 7 more miles into the estates and even go further eventually. And that will help alleviate traffic issues, at least in the short term, on Immokalee Road and Golden Gate Parkway. And then, of course, the Big Cypress Parkway is planned. It's a new north-south route that will connect those new villages and town east of DeSoto, and that will possibly eventually connect to Alligator Alley. Work is underway for Collier Boulevard traffic to fly over Davis Boulevard. You probably see the big concrete pillars on the eastern side of the road there. And those also going to be widening Collier Boulevard to 6 lanes. A lot of it is 6 lanes, but the part that's still 4 lanes will be widened to 6 lanes. Diverging diamond interchanges are being considered for the interstate exits on Pine Ridge and Immokalee. Unfortunately, by the time these new roads get built, we've seen it with Interstate 75, we saw it with Immokalee Road. By the time they get approved and funded and built and go through all the stages they have to go through, we already need more lanes. And that's where people you see the next Miami, you kind of get it. But growth can be viewed in a positive light too. So it's not just all negative with the next Miami folks, because we do have increased opportunities here, no doubt. Expect some incredible possibilities for entrepreneurs, property owners, builders, and of course, real estate brokers and sales associates. There's a lot of great opportunities still in store in Collier County. But readers often ask me if we're going to have more of this or more of that in the future of Collier County. And I tell them we're going to have more of everything, even hurricanes. That means the good and the bad, of course, more of everything. Sure, we undoubtedly will have more traffic and more crime, and we'll have more people and more pizzerias, but most importantly, we'll have more opportunity. I think that's the takeaway. So, because as long as people want to live in our subtropical paradise, many opportunities still exist here. More opportunities to make a living, more opportunities to make a difference. So I just encourage you to continue to be an entrepreneur, which I know as a realtor, the line between your personal and professional lives are very blurred, where you probably don't even have either one. But keep building your personal brand, keep evolving, and don't give up. And I thank you all. We're on time, and our final speaker today loves to speak about the economy, and that's the subject that may be hard to do, but he does a great job with it. And he wears a bow tie, too, so he's serious. He lives, works, breathes, and thinks economics. Dr. Elliot Eisenberg is an internationally acclaimed economist who is known for making the topic of the economy fun and relatable. Dr. Eisenberg earned a BA in economics with first-class honors from McGill University in Montreal, as well as a master's and a PhD in public administration from Syracuse University. He's a former senior economist with the National Association of Home Builders in Washington, D.C., the creator of the Multifamily Stock Index, the author of more than 85 articles, and is a regular consultant to several large real estate professional associations, hedge funds, and investment advisory groups. Dr. Eisenberg also writes a daily 70-word blog where he explains the topic of the day in 70 words or less, which that's not an easy thing to do if you've used X or Twitter. Please welcome to the stage, from Graphs and Laughs, internationally acclaimed economist, Dr. Elliot Eisenberg, who will be presenting the U.S. economy remarkably resilient so far.
Thank you. Wow, what an incredibly warm welcome. Thank you very much. After 4 economists or something, wow. I'm not even sure I want to hear myself, but I'm kidding. I've got a lot to talk about, so let's get going. But let's begin with my title of my talk, So Far. I think that's the key message here. The economy is, if you look at the 30,000-foot level, really, really good. It's amazing. Consumer spending is strong, car sales are good, and so on and so forth. We're not in a recession. A year ago, had somebody asked me, where would we be now, I would have said we'd be in a recession. But it hasn't happened. I'm going to tell you why before I get into anything else. It hasn't happened because, think about it. When the Fed raises rates, do they expect health care to go into recession? Are you going to stop going to the hospital because you need some? No. Are you going to have your kid not go to school? Oh, Junior, you finished grade 12, you got an A average. Oh, don't go to school for a year or two because Powell's raising rates. You going to do that? No. So health care doesn't stop. Government spending doesn't stop, right? K through 12 up and higher ed doesn't stop. Only certain sectors of the economy weaken when we have a recession. And they are construction, single-family construction, general non-res construction, and car sales. And for one reason or another, all three haven't reduced. Car sales haven't weakened because we were short cars during 21 and 22 during COVID. We couldn't get parts for the cars, so we couldn't make the cars, we couldn't sell the cars. We're several million cars short. So car sales are okay, I'll show you a graph. New home construction is not half bad. Just talked about now, all the stuff's going on, right? New construction is not bad because it's hard. Existing home sales are dismal because everyone's locked into their 30-year mortgage at 3%. So there's no homes to sell, so builders build new homes. So new home construction, while not great, like car sales, not great, but they're not bad. And then there's the CHIPS bill, the IRA bill, and the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And that helps non-res construction. So res construction, non-res construction, and auto sales are all fine, thank you very much. This is bizarre luck weirdness, but it happens. And luck matters. I mean, every single day, people win the lottery, right? Somewhere wins all. That's luck. And every day, some poor slob gets killed crossing the street. Bad luck. You don't count on luck, but luck really matters. So here, look, have a look. So this is overall GDP. 70% of GDP, or 69%, is household consumption. And I'll show you a graph. It's fine, but I'm very nervous. It's what I'm most nervous about. Corporate investment in inventory, plant, and equipment's going nowhere. Yeah, whatever. Government spending is not increasing. In 23, it went way up. The budget deficit went from roughly 5% of GDP to 7%. So suddenly, whoa, no wonder 23 turned out to have been a really good year. The deficit went up. Good old fiscal Keynesian stimulus, it was good. But not now. Last year, this year, it hasn't changed. It's still 6-7%. It's very high, too high, but that's besides the point. And lastly, exports minus imports, not an issue. It's getting a little worse. Doesn't really matter much. It all depends really on C and I. I is not going anywhere. Let's look at C. C is so far fine, but I'm nervous. Here, this is car sales. It gives you a perfect understanding of why our economy is doing okay. I mentioned it already earlier. Look historically, when the Fed raises rates, look on the far left, crashes. Look at here, crashed. There it crashed. COVID, it went down. Not now. Now it's okay. Rates are the highest they've been in 40 years, with the exception, last week they cut rates, but you get my point. And car sales are hanging up there. They're not where they were pre-COVID, but they're not bad. Well, that's a lot of jobs. 3-4% of GDP, doing fine, thank you very much. When a recession comes, GDP falls 1%. So if you have cars at 4% and housing at 4% and overall non-res construction at 3 or 4 more, that's 10. If that falls by 10, 20%, that's 1 or 2 points of GDP right there. And you're done. But it hasn't happened. This hasn't happened. It hasn't declined. Similarly, and this is used car prices, not that they're so important, but people bitch about used car prices. I think they've stopped falling. Pre-COVID, the index number, not a price, it's an index number, was at 150. You see it right there. And then it went way up, and now it's at 200. That's an increase of 33%. The overall CPI is up by 25 or 26%. So cars now, compared to the overall prices, used cars are up a little bit, but not a lot. They may come down a little more, but I think the vast majority of the decline is over. Now, this is total consumer spending, 69% of GDP. Now, consumer spending is broken down into 2 parts. Goods, and they report goods, and then they report all consumer spending end of month. I don't care about goods. I don't care what they spend it on. I just care about total spending. So retail sales will come out in a couple days or whatever it is, and they'll say, oh, retail sales are down or up, durable goods down or up. Who cares? I mean, doesn't matter. Because during COVID, we bought tons of goods, right? We bought pergolas, we bought pavers, I redecorated my house, I bought a new stove, I bought a Weber grill outside, a Sub-Zero fridge for outdoors to watch football or something. I bought 14 Pelotons, I'm done. I don't need to buy more stuff. I want services now. I want to go travel, sightsee, go to movies, do rock concerts, hockey games. That's the stuff you want to go see. So I don't care about goods. This is all spending, and it's fine. Look, pre-COVID, it's on this nice trajectory. Now imagine you don't know COVID exists. You don't know. You've never seen COVID. It's 2019. You take a ruler, and you just take the ruler and go like this and keep extrapolating the line. That's the same line, right? There's been no decline in consumer spending. That's good news. I'm happy. That's delayed or prevented us from going into a recession. Delightful. But there's a catch. This is the catch. Look at consumer incomes. This is real disposable income. So you've paid taxes and you've taken inflation out, right? So you have real income. Look what happens. Here's pre-COVID, good. Okay, that's stimmy check 1, 2, and 3. If we were on the same trajectory, we'd be up there. $1 trillion more than we are now. This is my concern. Where's the friggin' $1 trillion? And moreover, the slope here is pretty steep, right? Here it's flat. So the further out we go, the gap keeps getting wider. Because in the old days, it was growing that fast. Now it's growing only this fast. The gap's not shrinking, getting bigger. How the hell can GDP have grown so fast and consumer spending have done so well here? Despite while we're $1 trillion short of where we would have been had we just extrapolated the line. You with me here? This is the big question. So the answer is as follows. First, households don't save any money. Zero. It's 2.5, 3, 2.9 or whatever crazy low number it is. No one saves any money. We've outsourced savings to the friggin' Chinese. They save like crazy. We don't save at all. We don't save enough. They save too much. It's a problem for both countries, but that's another conversation. We don't save money. We're Americans. Whatever I earn, it's not enough. So that's number one. But it can't go to zero. I mean, it can go so low, right? So we're running out of space here, running out of gas, if you will. Second, credit card use in blue. Look at the blue. When it peaked out here back in 2000, 2001, it flattened, we had a recession. When it flattened, we had a recession. Okay, that's COVID, different story. Look what it's doing now. It's kind of flattening. What does this mean? This doesn't mean people are paying off their credit card bills. What it means is people have run out of ability to add more money to their credit card. They've maxed out their card. They have a 10,000 limit, a 20,000, a 6,000, whatever it is. They're maxed out. That's not a good sign. That means people aren't able to spend more because they can't put more on the card. When you have this, historically speaking, the last 2 or 3 times, you get a recession. That's so we've used credit cards. We're not saving money. And last but not least, we've burned through all the excess COVID money we've saved during COVID. So during COVID, think back, miss, June of 2020, where did you go on vacation? Backyard? Yeah, right, backyard. So you had a job, and now you didn't know it in June of 2020, but you were about to open up like a magical 2-year period of housing sales, right? Where all you had to do was answer a ringing phone. Because you didn't know in March, April, you thought your career was dead, right? And then, like a phoenix out of the ashes, it goes crazy good. Okay, fine. But now the money's gone. We've spent our money, excess COVID money. We're below zero on it. We've maxed out our credit cards. We're not saving any money. Something's going to give here. That's my concern. I'm not concerned that there's going to be a terrible recession. It won't be. It'll be a garden variety recession. But I kind of think we get a recession. I'll show you the data. And the way it goes like this, the history, economic history, says you get the recession. It says buy a chaise longue, maybe buy a good beer cooler, and buy a good bunch of good Russian novels you haven't read, each 1,000 pages. Sit back and catch up on great literature over the next year because there's going to be a recession. But luck, auto sales, new home construction, non-res construction, and more luck, I'll show you later, says no recession. Well, one of those sides is going to win the battle. I tend to think it's the recession, but I'm not sure. I think it's 60-40 recession, but not a bad one. That's the other important thing. And most importantly for you, and I'm going to get on my recession conversation here, most importantly for you, it doesn't make any difference because you've already had the recession. Housing sales have hit rock bottom. You've heard everyone here talk about it. You're at 3.85 million seasonally adjusted sales last month, and the last 3 or 4 months have been below 4 million. You almost never get below 4 million. Whatever happens, rates are going to come down. They're going to come down slowly. They're going to come down more quickly, but they're going to come down, and that's going to lead to more sales. So don't look at the newspapers and the TikTok and so on, right? And go, oh my God, it's going to be a recession. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get worse. Whatever happens, it's going to get better. We can argue how quickly, we can argue how much, but it will improve. I have no doubt. We are at rock bottom in home sales right now because the only people buying a house now or selling a house now are people who are dead and their estate's selling the house. They've gotten married. They have death, disease, divorce, right? The things you pray for, I'm kidding. They had octuplets, or they had they had to move from Naples to Pittsburgh or Boston or Seattle or something. They had to buy a house, sell a house. That's it. There's very little demand, but there's less supply. Prices rise. You are done. Your recession's over. You've fallen from 6 million sales seasonally adjusted in 22 to 4 million, a decline of 33%. That's nuts. So don't sit here and say, oh, I'm giving you bad news. I'm giving you background information you may want to share with your people who want to buy, right? Like, what do you think's going to happen? But this is not going to affect your business because we're not going to have much of an increase in unemployment because it's going to be a garden variety recession. So just don't feel you need to drink after this is over because you're miserable. Drink because you want to enjoy yourself. And if you really want to drink, I'll tell you how much to drink. I want you to walk out of my session right now, having heard me speak, and I want you to get one drink or one beer or one shot of booze. Or after November 6th, one hit of a J. That's it. Don't do it now, it's illegal. Out. But one beer, one Chardonnay or a Chablis or Pinot Noir or whatever it is, right? A shot of booze or one hit. That's it. Not the whole J, not the whole bottle, not the whole case. Just be a little agitated. And be agitated not for yourself because your industry has already been hit. Be agitated for your friends. You know, oh yeah, it's hard. I understand. I'm sympathetic. You can say, I don't know what that's like. My industry is doing great. You can lie or something, you know. But so that's household consumption, 70% of GDP. Let's look at inventory and equipment and physical plant, building physical plant. Inventory here, it's going up. And it's almost back up to its low of the last 20 years at 1.35 months of inventory, right? It's improving, but it's almost done. There's not much more it can do. Historically speaking, the highest it's been is 1.5. The low is 1.35. It's now 1.32, so it's up from 1.1. So it's largely done. That's it. So corporate investment in inventory is not going to help. In the very short run, it's going to go up, because of the fear of the port strike along the entire East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, sorry, East Coast for you guys looking that way around, and the Gulf of Mexico, right? They're all going to go on strike, all the way from Alabama to Boston, right? That whole area, the whole 2/3 of the country goes on strike. So we're going to import a lot of stuff now. There's massive importing going on because of fear of strike, but that's not going to help us. Now, how about firms investing in equipment and plants? Well, this is plant. This is how much you're using your current plant. And you can see here, 81%, that's very high. When it gets above 80, firms start to build. And that's why it doesn't get much above 81 or 82. But look where it is now. 77.5? And it's been declining, and manufacturing has been in a recession for 2 years in a row. So manufacturing's in a recession. You're not using your factory all that intensively. Is this a particularly, interest rates are high. Is this a propitious time to build more plant or buy equipment? Consensus? Not really. So firms aren't. The only plant that's getting built now is CHIPS bill and the IRA bill. So you're building fabs for semiconductors, and you're building things for electric cars and batteries for electric cars that no one seems to really want right now. That will change. But right now, that's it. As a matter of fact, there's been so much construction in that area, the construction of manufacturing facilities, despite the fact that manufacturing has been in recession now for 2 straight years, manufacturing construction has gone from $80 billion a year to $240 billion a year. It's tripled because of governmental stimulus. And that's almost half of all construction increases come from government. And then the other stuff is in bipartisan infrastructure bill, a lot of that too. So this is really weird, but government has been accidentally stimulating the economy now at the right time to potentially completely avoid a recession. But this is not going to, so I is not going to help. Inventory, plant, equipment, not going to solve the problem. Here, this is equipment. So that was inventory. This is physical plant, and this is equipment. The blue is inflation adjusted. Not so exciting. So I is not going to come to the rescue. Oh, now we have government spending. We have fiscal policy and monetary policy, both. Fiscal policy is Congress cutting taxes, raising taxes, giving us stimmy checks, and so on. Look at the red. Look at the red in 23 to the left of the forecast line, right there. It was really high because the budget deficit in 2023 was really high. Right now, our budget deficit's still really, really high, the same as last year. But in 2024, government hasn't come to the rescue, increased the deficit to stimulate the economy more. This is good, by the way, because our deficit's now so high. This is a deficit we've only seen 6-7% of GDP. Only occurs when you have a war or a recession, or a pandemic. And we have none of those things going on right now. So we're now being fiscally wildly irresponsible. But I digress. In 2024, you can see nothing's happening. Now, in 25, it'll be different because both parties are offering us multitudes of ways to become more irresponsible. You know, Trump said, oh, let's not tax tips. And Harris said, yeah, let's not tax trips. Harris says, let's offer a $25,000 first-generation home buyer discount. What does that mean? If I walk off the plane from, like, Belgium, do I qualify as a first-generation American? Anyways, that's a stupid policy. But Trump, not to be outdone, he has another stupid one. Overtime's not taxed. WTF? By the way, my fee, the new one now, tips aren't taxed, right? So from now on, my fee, 0. I just want tip. I mean, these are, and both of these dunces have a bachelor's degree in economics. Clearly, the economics profession has failed America. Because the two of them have thought up more dumb ideas that I really can think of. And look, the history is not good. Politicians are not the world's best people here. They're present company accepted, but you get my point. I could go on and rail against both. I hate her, I hate him for different reasons, but I hate them intensely both. In the short run, the problem with the elections is as follows. It's very close. Everybody admits, everything I read and watch says it's super close. So let's suppose you're like a thoughtful person. You're a woman, you're thoughtful, you care about your children, and you aren't old enough to have grandkids yet, or old enough to have great-grandkids, but you're gonna have them if all goes well, and they'll be alive, and you care about them, and you wanna build a solar panel plant or a windmill plant or something. And I'm an evil person, I don't care, I wanna make money, I'm not concerned about the world, I wanna build a coal plant. Well, one of us is gonna be right, but we don't know who's gonna win, so we both do nothing. So in the very short run, it depresses economic activity slightly. And even going forward, what matters more than who wins for fiscal policy is Congress. The president can alter tariffs at will. He has some control because it's a foreign policy. He can use rules that say that it's a foreign policy defense issue, and they can do what they want. He or she can do it he or he wants. But if they want to do anything else with tax cuts, increases, or whatever, budget deficit thing, Congress has to sign on the dotted line. So if the president and the same party get the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, watch out. Wild irresponsibility will follow. Every single president, Obama, W, then Obama, then Trump, then Biden, all of them in their first 2 years, when they had the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, did wildly irresponsible things. They may have been nice ideas, don't get me wrong, but they were fiscally unaffordable. And they're gonna offer us more fiscally unaffordable things. Hers less fiscally unaffordable than his, so hers are just awful, his are downright worse. But it's just a matter it's death by firing squad or electrocution here. You get to choose, but the differences are subtle, let's put it that way. I'm not impressed either one, because not one of them cares about the deficit, the budget, or fiscal response of any kind. They don't even pretend to care anymore. So it might go up, the deficit might rise in 26, but it's going to take them months to get the bills passed in 25 before fiscal 26 starts. So 25 is not going to have much fiscal stimulus from Washington either. So government's not going to come to the rescue. Now, how about trade? Is trade going to work the problem solution? No. Here's the story. Look on the very far right. This is the trade deficit. It's getting worse, as you can see on the far right. Why is it getting worse? Look at the blue on top. The blue is exports. They're up slightly, but not much, right? But look at imports in green. Whoa, they are going up like crazy because our dollar's strong. Our dollar's strong because interest rates here are higher than foreign countries. And that's because our GDP growth is better. So what are we doing? You, Bill, are now no longer buying cheap Wisconsin cheese. You're now buying fancy French cheeses. You're not buying an American car, no, you're buying a BMW instead and wrecking our economy. But that's what we're doing because it's cheap to buy imported goods. And you see it here, right? So exports, so consumer spending is strong, but I'm nervous. I is not gonna help us. Corporate investment in plant, inventory, and equipment, no. Government spending, no. Exports, net export, no. So how are we going to get household consumption up? Well, jobs, I suppose, would help, right? But jobs are getting worse. Unemployment's going up. Wage increases are going down. So that's why I'm nervous. This is why I feel we get the recession. Let me show you some history now. This is history. This is expectations, leading economic indicators minus current indicators. Look how low they are. When they're that low, recession, 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 recession. Leading indicators suck. Credit card use is extended. Not good. Then there's banks not lending. This is banks lending for commercial and industrial loans, C&I loans. So it's not construction loans, I apologize, but it's a better measure. And what it shows is if you're above the x-axis, banks are tightening, and it tells you the percentage of banks that are tightening. 20%, 30%, 40%, you get the idea. And look, so here, 50% of banks are tightening. Whoa, that's horrible. And historically, you get a recession, a recession, a recession, a recession. We didn't get it here. Good news. It's come down. It's just 10% now. Yay! But contain your enthusiasm. Look, recession, 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 a weird quarter, and a recession. It's still friggin' 4 for 4. What this is telling us is that when banks don't lend, you tend to get recessions. Why? Money isn't the grease, the grease, oil that greases the machine. Money is the machine. If money's not flowing and banks aren't lending, the economy stops working. That's the problem. That's what this shows us. And banks aren't lending. Hopefully this turns around, it gets better, it gets below the x-axis below, and that's good news. The lower the better here. We need time. Do we have enough time? We'll get there more, but it's a race against time. Every day the economy is weakening, but Powell's lowering rates. Can Powell lower them fast enough, even though the economy is deteriorating, we avoid the recession? So the lower rates are helping, but the economy is weakening. If this one's stronger than that one, we avoid the recession. If this one's strong now, we get the recession. I think we get the recession because of the history, which I'll show you. But only a 60-40 chance here. This is not like super high, and the recession won't be long or bad. That's also important to remember. This is not a recession like 08, 09. Don't worry. So here's history. Here's also something that makes me nervous. Look at this graph. So yellow is mortgage, so for people owning a house. And look at mortgage defaults, 30-day delinquencies on mortgages. They're back where they were pre-COVID. They're going up, that's bad, but they're not really high. Okay, I'm with you on that one. You've convinced me that's not serious. But look at the blue and the green. Credit cards and auto loans, they're very elevated. They're not as high as they were during the housing bust of 08, 09, but they're high. They're maybe plateauing, good, but they're still really high. How do you have a job without a house, without a car? You give up your car, you have no job. I mean, you live in Boston, New York, Washington, whatever, San Francisco, yeah, sure, but most 90% of Americans need a car to get to work. This is really not a good sign. And, oh yeah, we're putting more on our credit card, now we're not paying the bill. What's happening is low-income people are really struggling. If you have a house and a portfolio of stock, you're fine. If you own a house, not much of a portfolio, you're okay. If you don't have a house and don't have a portfolio, you're screwed. And the longer the high rates go, it affects more households. So now it affects households who just bought a house 2 years ago with a small portfolio. People have a little bigger portfolio, until it hits everybody. Not everybody. Eventually, some people don't care, right? But you get my point. This isn't good news. Now look at this. This is the Fed raising rates. This is history. This graph shows you every time the Fed's raised rates since 1955. 13 times, excluding the current session we're in now, where the Fed began raising in 22 and now just began to lower last week. That will be the 14th time, 14th sequence, rate hiking sequence we've had since 1955. Of these 13 times on this graph, the 13 times the Fed raised rates, 10 times you get a recession. Miss, you have some physical ailments, non-life threatening. Lower back pain or ankle, that's arthritic or, something, elbow, tennis elbow or something, whatever. And you come, I'm a doctor and I'm the best doctor for whatever this ailment is. And I say, look, money back guarantee, after surgery, you have no pain. And you're 25 and you're saying, oh my God, first time in my life, no pain, a pain-free life. I'm excited. And I say, what's your name? Pardon me? Terry Lynn. I say, Terry Lynn, I did the surgery 13 times last week. 10 times the patient died on the table. Do you want to do the surgery? It's not life-threatening, remember. You go, I don't think so. I hate my husband, but I love our dogs or our grandchildren or kids or uncles or nieces or the tree in the backyard or whatever it is. You don't do the surgery. The problem is we're on the operating table. Powell's got a couple of scalpels, and he's cutting the crap out of us. And I think he lowered rates too late. That's the problem. The Fed almost always lowers rates too late and generates the recession. The 3 times we didn't have a recession, this guy's so upset that I talked about the recession, he's walking out, for God's sake. Look at him, he's walking out, yeah. You and the horse you came to town on, buddy. So the 3 times we didn't get a recession, here, and there, they're purple, 64, 84, 94. 64, the Vietnam War was ramping up, so fiscal policy was loose, compensating for monetary policy being tight. In 84, gasoline, oil prices collapsed, and that helped end the Soviet Union. Between Star Wars from Reagan and cheap oil, they couldn't afford to pay for the defense with the lack of money they weren't getting from the sale of oil, right? And in 94, what happened? The tech boom. Amazon, Microsoft, Qualcomm, these firms are all doing remarkably well, and our 401ks were growing rapidly. We were getting rich and feeling really happy. So luck matters. If we don't have the recession, and you bring me back in a year or two because you can't find a better economist, I will never say I said the recession was going to happen. Me? No. I'll tell you the reason we didn't have the recession was because of COVID and the car sales that were good and the home sales that were strong, right? And the overall non-res construction was good and so on and so forth. And more luck, I'll show you, we have more stuff going as well. And moreover, the year ends in 4. 64, 84, 94, 2024. 4 is a superpower year. So that, you get my point. Luck can well help us. Powell lowers rates quick enough. The economy doesn't slow much more. We avoid the recession. Here's more history. This is the inverted yield curve. Ignore the graph. Look at me for the time being. The yield curve, you know what the yield curve is. Intuitively, you know it. Because when you sell a house or someone buys a house from you, they ask, what's the rate? And you go, well, how long do you want to borrow for? You want a 10-year loan? I'm making up numbers, 5%. You want a 20-year? 5.5. You want a 30-year? Well, that's going to be 6. The longer you borrow for, the more you pay. The yield curve is upward sloping. Here, interest rates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. More years, higher rate. Shorter years, lower rate. You got that. This is intuitively obvious. You deal with this every day. If you don't understand this, maybe you should change careers, okay? So we're good here. Now, but for 2 years, for 2 straight years, if you compared the 2-year treasury with the 10-year treasury, the 2-year was more expensive than the 10. So the yield curve, instead of being upward sloping, was downward sloping. You paid a higher rate for short term. If you went longer term, it got cheaper. That makes no sense. When I heard about this for the first time when I was in college, I thought my professor was clearly high on drugs or on booze or something insane. But it happened. So for 2 straight years, the yield curve, instead of being upward sloping, was downward sloping. Now, this is the 1-year, 10-year, because that's my favorite measure. But the 2-10, which is what most people look at, is now positive. So it was positive, it went negative, now it's positive again. It's gotten the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks, really pretty positive. Like a tenth of a point. I mean, that's huge after 2 years being upside down. People go, yay, no recession. I go, time out. Look at the graph. The last couple times the yield curve has inverted, look here. The recession showed up there. When it's above the line, you're upside down. When you're below the line, you're the right way up. So it was good, it was bad, it gets good again, and then the recession shows up. And then the recession shows up. And then the recession shows up. So what happens is the yield curve is normally sloped. It goes bad. That's a bad sign. That tells you monetary policy screwed up. Then it improves, and then the recession comes half the time. So we're not out of the woods. Why? Why does this weird thing happen? When things get better, seemingly, does the recession maybe begin? And it's because of this. It takes on average, 2 friggin' years to get a recession. by raising interest rates. Because most people don't care about interest rates. I think I care about interest rates more than my daughter, for God's sake. I look at interest rates all day long. I'm in the elevator waiting. What's the 10-year doing? What's the 10-year doing? What's the 10-year? I look at the 10-year all day. I can't help myself. Again, if that determines how much I love something, I love the 10-year more than anything in the whole world, more than food. Okay? Most people don't even know there is a 10-year. They don't even know it exists. They don't care. If they think, I want to buy a hamburger. Am I not going to buy a hamburger because rates are high? No. Am I not going to go get a haircut? No. Am I not going to buy a pair of glasses? No one cares. Nobody cares. Unless you buy a house or a car or an investment property or something big, a boat or something. No one cares about rates. So the fact that we haven't had a recession yet is good news. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy. It's been 30 months since the Fed began raising rates. And the average is 24. So this is getting pretty good. 25, whatever the average is here. But I'm not convinced we're done because our financial situation's has been ameliorated because of all this luck. Can the luck hold on? Well, I hope it holds on. Let me tell you, no one wants a recession, but I'm not convinced. Now, this will tell you how bad the recession will be. This goes back to 1858, before the Civil War. We were all farmers back then. I want to draw your attention to the Great Depression, the 43-monther and the 13-monther that follow it. Those two together are the Great Depression, those two right there. Since the Great Depression, which occurred 95 years ago, it's a while, we've had only 3 bad recessions. We had the 74-75 Arab oil embargo when oil prices quadrupled and oil was in short supply deliberately by the Arabs. We had the second Paul Volcker recession, the 16-monther. The first one was 6 months. The second was 16. That's when prime hit 21%, for those of you old enough to remember Bill. Third, we had the housing bust of 08-09 when housing prices fell 27% because we had a credit bubble leading to a housing bubble and so on. Those were 3 out of 95 years. I mean, the chance of this one being terrible or low. Moreover, those were weird. Oil was in short supply. 15 or 20 years of monetary policy got us to the Paul Volcker recession, and the housing bust was this massive credit bubble. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with our economy right now. Yeah, maybe home price a little high, the stock market's a little overpriced, sure, but nothing fundamentally wrong here. This will not be a bad or long recession, so it may not happen, 40% chance it doesn't happen. If it does, it won't be big or bad. Moreover, for your industry, you don't care. You've already had it. You're getting better regardless of what happens. So don't sit here and go, oh my God. Now, let's talk about the labor market, because this is why I think we have the recession. When the labor market weakens, people stop spending because they're afraid they'll lose their job or they've already lost their job, and you see a friend lose their job and you go, oh my gosh, I might be next. I better start saving my money. If we all start to save our money simultaneously, you go into recession. So here's the data. This is unemployment. Look at the far right of the graph, the far right. It's going up, right? Look how much it's gone up, the curve, the slope of the curve. Now, look at every other recession that's preceded it. Here, 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 and here. They all have the same curve, more or less. The data says this woman's so upset that the recession's oncoming, she's leaving now to get a head start and beat the recession, right? The data shows that when unemployment goes up by 0.5 percentage point in a short period of time, you've got a recession on your hands. If we don't get a recession, and unemployment's going to still go up, it's not finished going up. This would be remarkable. I mean, I would be very excited. Powell goes in the Hall of Fame, right? I hope it happens. But the history says, credit card history says no, right? Bank lending says no. Inverted yield curve says no. Fed raising rates says no. High rated increase in the unemployment rate says no. History says you get the recession. No, luck says no, luck matters. We've had it 3 out of 13 times, right? That's why it's surgery, right? Here, look at this. This is people who want a full-time job who can't find it. It's going up. Not a good sign. That's a sign of a labor market that's not creating jobs, which we're not doing. If you look at the household survey over the last 12 months, we've created no full-time jobs. 0. And the labor data we get is bad. It's not bad because the bureaucrats are bad. It's because the data is just crummy data. So don't believe it. We're producing many fewer jobs than we think. Here, this is quits. When you feel good and unemployment's low, what do? You quit your job because you can get a better job because there are lots of jobs available, right? Look at the graph. Dot-com boom, 2.4% of the population quit their jobs on the far left. Housing boom, 2.2% quit their job every month. And pre-COVID here, 2.3% quit their job every month. So 2.4, 2.2, 2.3, those are like normal numbers when the unemployment rate is low. People feel empowered and they tell their boss to, and your kid is ugly. And, all right? But look at now. So when COVID was at its worst, look, the quit rates were 3%. Everybody was quitting their job. There were tons of jobs available. There were signing bonuses everywhere, and people quit. Wages were going up. Inflation was really bad. Now unemployment's going up. People can't find a job, and quit rates are now well below where they were pre-COVID. They're at 2. It's not that low, but it's no longer spectacularly high. Unemployment's up. You can't find a full-time job. No one's quitting their job. No one's saying, oh, yeah, let's just quit my job. No, it ain't happening now. So as a result of this, I'm going to come back to that slide. I'll come back to that one. I'll come back. Look at wage growth. It's coming straight down. So unemployment's going up. Wage growth is declining. Where are we going to get the jobs to fill in that $1 trillion gap is my concern. The solution, obviously, is HELOCs and refi. So if you're going to start to do HELOCs and refi because rates are coming down, that could propel us for another year. You borrow $30,000, $40,000, 50, 100, do a rental, whatever you do. You borrow enough to get through another year of spending, and then rates come down enough, and the economy's finally avoid the recession. I'm optimistic. I'm not banking on it, but it could happen. Now let's go back and look at this other data. This is the number of jobs available per number of unemployed people available per job. So when COVID hit right here, there were 5 unemployed people, 20 million unemployed Americans, and 4 million jobs. 20 over 4 is 5. When COVID was at its most intense, when job quits were 3% of the labor force, at that same moment, there were 2 jobs available for every person. So imagine 5 million unemployed Americans, 10 million jobs. You with me? Look at it now. It's fast approaching 1, which is higher, which is worse than it was pre-COVID. It was 0.8. It was 1.2 jobs per person. The labor market across the board, by every definition and every measure and every metric, is weakening. It's the single most important sector. If it weakens enough more, if it stops weakening, okay, no recession. If it keeps weakening, I think we wind up in a recession. Powell's got a friggin' get off the brake and get on the gas and cut rates and cut rates and cut rates and cut them. Quick, half a point. Come on, move. We're in a race against time, in my opinion. This is total hours worked, the change in hours worked year over year. So imagine there are 170 million Americans who work, big number, and they each work 35 hours a week. Multiply 170 million times 35. And do this every quarter. And plot the change. The last 6, 7 quarters, there's been no change. We're not working anymore because we're creating part-time jobs. No full-time jobs. We're not working more. Pay is still growing, but slowing. Unemployment's going up. You can't find full-time work. This is a weakening labor market. It is not weak, but it's weakening, and as it weakens, it then takes off. You saw that from the first graph. When unemployment goes up, it continues. It doesn't stop halfway through, right? This is people getting fired. And I'm comparing this to 18, 19, 22, and 23. So I'm skipping 20 and 21 because they're COVID weird years. And if you drew a line through this over the course of the year, it's mildly upward sloping. Firms are starting to lay off workers. But layoffs and firings are the last thing firms do. When things go bad, what do firms do? First, they don't post. Then they don't hire. Then they say, you know what? Everybody come into work an hour less this week. So they give you like a little mild furlough. Then they fire you. Firing is the last thing they do This is a friggin' lagging economic indicator. Unemployment is a lagging economic indicator. It's not a leading or coincident piece of data. So if you're looking at unemployment, you're looking at yesterday's news. It isn't so bad yet. Yeah, I hope it doesn't get any worse. But if firings start to go up now, because it kind of gets a little worse, and we've already stopped posting and stopped hiring and done some furloughs, then unemployment goes up and we're done. So I'm nervous. I want Powell to cut rates quicker. We discussed that. And we also have more luck. We've also got more luck. Luck is immigration. I don't want to get into the legal, illegal immigration moment right now. I understand that. And I have very strong opinions on this, like we all do. But let's abstract from them for a moment and just say, look, immigration's way up. When immigration's way up, that pushes inflation down. Right? If you have a job opening, you have one applicant, you're going to hire that person. No matter how bad they are, you're hiring them. But now, because of immigration, you have two applicants. Oh, I can pick the better one and pay them less money because I can threaten, if I don't hire you, I'll hire them instead. Lower wages, more choice, better employee. This is a good outcome. GDP rises, more jobs, I'm happy. This is helping. This is helping. This is pushing down inflation. If you think inflation is going to get worse, it will not. It will not get worse because unemployment is going up, so wage growth is going to go down. It's not going to be bad because immigration is very strong. It's not going to be bad because factory utilization rates are coming down. We have excess capacity in firms. We have excess capacity in labor. We have Chinese imports to the US. They're getting cheaper. Every time you open a 40-foot shipping container from China, out comes deflation. So transportation costs have come down, import costs have come down, commodity prices are going nowhere, gasoline's really cheap, excess capacity in firms, unemployment's rising. If you think interest rates are, inflation is going up, you're freaking out of your mind. That's why Powell's stupid to wait. There's no reason he should expect inflation. And the only reason inflation's so high, and I'll get there, I'll show you a little graph a little bit later on, is because of insurance costs for cars and housing and health and so on. And then lastly, here, more luck. Labor productivity is way up. It's the best number we've had in 15 years, since 2010 or 11, excluding COVID. And what happened during COVID is you fired your worst workers. What's your name? Pardon me? Dominic. So I make a pizza parlor. You throw pizzas. Dominic, you're a good Italian guy. He's a terrible pizza thrower. Terrible. So when COVID came, I fired him. And because he was so bad, when I fired him, labor productivity skyrocketed because my other workers were so much better than you. But after a month, my God, DoorDash, Uber Eats, busy. No one's eating in the restaurant, but they're ordering pizzas. I come back and say, Dominic, please, come back. You come back, and labor productivity goes to hell. So this is like the Dominic effect right there, right? It is what it is. It's true, but it's meaningless. It's a COVID artifact. But high productivity is also pushing down inflation. This is allowing the Fed to cut rates because there's no fear of inflation. Excess capacity in supply, excess capacity in workers, in factories, in imported goods, immigration, labor productivity growth. This is all deflationary. So the Powell should just get on with the show already. Now, let's talk about inflation. Is there inflation? Is there inflation? Well, let's have a look. This is my evidence of inflation. I think there's inflation. So what's going on? Look, inflation is yesterday's battle. It's yesterday's fight. Look, CPI in blue, headline CPI. It's coming down rapidly. It's now at 2.9 or 3 or whatever it's at. It's very low, 2.8. Core is more important in red. It's a little higher at 3 or 3.2, 3, whatever. It's coming down, it's a little higher, it's coming down. And the only reason it didn't come down faster is you can see right there. Right there. In the first quarter, insurance costs went crazy. Auto insurance went up 20% year over year. Why? Because the car prices went up during COVID. And then we drive badly, and we're killing more people on the roads because we're all maniacs. We're all on our phones, and we're stressed or whatever, right? The kids screaming in the back, I don't know, whatever. And electric cars are more expensive to fix. So the cars go up in 21 and 22. It then takes the car insurers a year or two to go to the insurance commissioners of the states to get permission to raise the insurance costs. And now they hit, the Vigoro hits the Mixmaster and they go up. This is gonna end. Next year they'll go up at a normal rate, but they won't go up at 17, 18, 20% every year. It's not gonna happen. So that was a temporary problem and now it's continuing to fall again. Inflation may go up on Friday, may go up 1/10 of a point. Yeah, who cares? It's going to end. It's gonna continue to fall, and by the end of the year, it'll be at 2.2, 2.25. Now it's 2.6. It'll fall another 30 basis points, 0.3 of a point. This is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, not CPI, a different measure called PCE. The point is, it's lower than CPI. The numbers here on the far right are both in the mid-twos, 2.6, 2.7. They're in that 2. So they're very close to what the Fed wants it to. They're coming down. The Fed should stop thinking about effing inflation and just drink a bottle of booze, cut the rates, and give us a better chance to withstand the threat of the recession. So what's the Fed been doing and done? The Fed funds was 5 3/8. 2 meetings ago, they did nothing because they almost never, they're lazy bums. They were late to raise, now they were late to cut, and that's how we have problems. They were late to raise, we have inflation. They're late to cut, we'll probably get a recession. Last meeting, they did nothing, the meeting before last. Finally, last week, they cut rates 0.5 point. Good for them. Nice, aggressive cut. I thought they'd cut a quarter, they cut a half. I'm very happy. I want to see them keep cutting more. Don't cut a quarter, cut a half now, or a half quarter, or a quarter, a half. But add an extra 25 basis points, an extra quarter point cut somewhere between now and the end of the year to show us that you care. That's the issue here. It's a race against time, in my opinion. The history says we get the recession, luck says no. Well, if you're gonna rely on luck, don't rely on luck longer than you have to, right? Take the luck, say thank you, and then get on with the show and cut rates. That's what I want to see. And here's one more reason why we haven't had a recession. The money supply. Look on the bottom far right corner of the graph, down here. Money supply has been shrinking now for a long time, and it troughed out at almost negative 10% year over year decline in the size of the money supply. But yet we had no recession. Look back here, recession, right? Recession. But not now. Why? Because of this. What happened here? Rates fell to zero, and what did you do? You refinanced your house, you refinanced your boat, you refinanced your plane, you refinanced your second home, and you bought an investment property because rates were low. Now they go up. Who cares? So we have some insurance. This bought us some time to overcome the negativity of that. More luck, labor productivity, immigration, money supply going up by 25%. I mean, staggering amount of increase over there, right? This has all stayed off the recession. And car sales doing well, new home construction doing pretty well. There are other people already talked about, right? All this data, it matters. The CHIPS bill, the IRA bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We've had so much friggin' luck, it's amazing. The excess COVID savings that we've spent, and on and on. Now, I want a couple stylized housing facts. You saw most of them already, but I wanted to share with them. The first, you saw the same graph. Jessica put it up, right? And it says, look, demographically right now, things are great. 15 years ago, we were there and it sucked. But now the number of people are much, much higher. This is a good piece of news. Next, credit bubble 15 years ago led to the housing bust. Now there's no credit bubble. It's different. It's different. There's no foreclosure problem now, nothing out there. And look at credit quality. Look at credit quality. It was terrible, and now it's outstanding. Different story. This is not 08, 09, even if we get the recession. Moreover, who's going to build a lot of houses when the cost of materials to build a house are up 40% since COVID? Not going to happen. We're going to be underbuilt for a very long time. The housing market's a great place to be, and buying multifamily in the long run is going to be a great thing to do. In the short run, multifamily is struggling for a whole bunch of reasons, I understand. And who's going to build houses? You know, Kamala Harris wants to build 3 million houses. So do I. But who the F is going to build them? Unemployment's 4%. Not happening. Look at the cost of a trailer home. This is a single wide home is $90,000. Before COVID, it was 55. That tells you we got a problem. I got like 2 or 3 more slides. What about here? And then we're done. I have a cab waiting for me. I got to go to the airport. But you're more important. First, where's growth occurring? The South, Texas, and the Intermountain West. That's immigration within the U.S. And where's overall population growth occurring? Texas, the South, the South, the South, the South, the South, the West, the South, the West, the West. It's Intermountain West, Texas, and the South. That's it. Again, same data. This is now by percentage growth. Same states, almost the same states. And here's the same graph again. Last couple years, population growth. Tennessee, the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Intermountain West. That's it. That's it. This is the same graph now showing you by county where the population was going. And you can see Florida, parts of Texas, not all Texas, but the eastern half of Texas certainly, and the Intermountain West. That's where population growth is. The Fed, this will be a decent year. GDP won't be as good as last year, but it'll be a decent year. For you, it doesn't make any difference. The Fed will keep cutting rates for the foreseeable future for a year or a year and a half. Hopefully they do it sooner and they do it less. They do it quicker and bigger amounts, and they get it done with. Growth will probably keep slowing, and unemployment's probably not done. We're going up, and that makes me nervous. Inflation should keep slowing. Watch inflation a bit, but watch unemployment. It's much, much more important. Last but not least, this is my name, my cell number, phone number, Twitter handle, website, and email address. I put out 70 words 5 days a week on the economy. No graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. If you want to get it, text the word bow tie, one word to the 5-digit number 66866. Be prompted for an email address. You'll hear from me every day until you die. And if you die and go to hell like me, we'll drink and talk economics. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, I was worried we weren't going to talk about the election. Thank you, Elliot. Okay, I think we'd like to give a huge round of applause to our fantastic speakers, Jamie French, Dr. Jessica Lautz, Dr. Brad O'Connor, Tim Ayton, and Dr. Elliot Eisenberg for their excellent presentations today. And Tim, thank you for wearing 2 hats, for moderator and for keeping us on track with your presentation. So thank you, Tim. Fantastic. Okay. In closing, we hope that this was knowledgeable and that you gained some information that you can use with your customers in the future to help you make more well-informed and better decisions. So a video of each of the speakers' presentations will be available on our YouTube channel. It's called NABOR, N-A-B-O-R-F-L. So along with their slide presentation. So go give them a couple of days and they'll have that posted. Finally, very important, there's going to be a short survey sent to you by email to all participants and all attendees. We'd greatly appreciate if you'd fill it out, be brutal, because we want to know how you felt about the program. This is 1, 2, 3, I think 3 or 4 programs into one. 4 into 1. So it's a huge cost savings for you and a time saving for you. So we want to know, does this really work for you? So be honest with us and try to get them back in a timely manner. And hopefully we'll just be a better and better symposium every year. Again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the reception on the concourse. And that concludes our 2024 NABOR Symposium. Thank you.